Hello, and welcome to Back Through the Lens, where two film school friends talk about movies through the haze of nostalgia. The good, the bad, and the ones that aren't quite how we remember them. I'm your host, Rachel, and with me is my co host, Joe. Today's topic is movies that made us cinephiles.
Most of us seem to like movies. Some of us really like movies. But there are some of us that really like movies. Like, a lot. I'm talking about those of us who watch films repeatedly for entertainment, for education, for inspiration, for an escape. We all start out as casual viewers, but what film pushed us into obsession? What was the film that made us want to know more, to learn, to study, and to possibly create? These are the movies that stretched the limits of what we thought films could do, left us in awe, and set us down a path of needing to watch more.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I feel like I need to address how elitist this episode topic sounds, but I didn't know how else to sum it up in a brief title.
I mean, yeah, cinephiles, movie enthusiasts,
Film buffs.
film buffs,
Well, it's
movies
like,
that made us love movies. It's very wordy. It's hard for a title, I guess.
Yeah, I think my initial idea with this episode was movies that made us love movies. But yes, you're right. That's a bit of a wordy title
And vague.
and vague. Yeah. But yeah, as you pointed out when we were discussing this earlier, neither of us walk around talking about how, like, I'm Rachel, I'm a cinephile, I'm a film
Right.
buff. Like,
No, because no.
right.
I feel like, and I don't want to steal your thunder, but I feel like the ideal of this episode is, if I can put it into words, which obviously we've struggled to do for this title, is
Mhm.
like a movie that kind of was an aha moment, a light bulb, if you will, that made us realize that there are more to films than just the entertainment value.
Yeah, for me, it was, and spoiler alert, my pick is Moulin Rouge. For me, I remember seeing Moulin Rouge and feeling like this was different than anything I had ever seen before. And that set me down a path to like understanding auteurism and, director choices and whatnot. Up until this point, I mean, I'm sure there were some outliers, but I would say I was pretty much watching like, I don't know, teen movies, rom-coms, like things that were very targeted at my age group. And I never thought about this whole wide world of like cinema and different genres and different directors like that was out there to be discovered.
Yeah, I can't really remember what my thought process was. I just always loved watching movies. We can argue maybe it was Wizard of Oz that set me on this path, but I don't think I had the cognitive brain power to it was just things on screen that entertained me, essentially.
Right, yeah.
Um, I think before my pick, which is The Matrix, I think I kind of vaguely started going down that path, but not with the intent or the willpower. I think it was just, I like these movies. I think it was, this movie made me kind of go, whoa.
Yeah, I think of it as your first time seeing something very original that was maybe more artistic or creative, like I said, than the typical like teen rom-com I was going to see,
Mhm.
which, and that's not to take anything away from movies we like purely as entertainment. I'm
No,
sure we both have movies that we even recognize are not great, but we still love them, and that's okay too.
I
I
probably have
think
more in that pile than not.
I don't think every movie has to be this great work of art, but for the purposes of this episode, I was thinking of movies that really showed us something we hadn't seen before.
Hmm.
And I also kind of feel silly attributing that to my pick, but at the age I was when it came out, that was my first time seeing anything that original.
I felt like my pick. There's a
Mhm.
lot of technological innovations at the
Mhm.
time, and on the rewatch, it's still, some of them still hold true, but it was more the kind of the plot, I guess, and it made me think more than most films.
Do we want to get into my pick, or did you have anything else to add?
No.
No. Okay. All right, so my pick is Moulin Rouge, directed by Baz Luhrmann, released June 1st, 2001, rated PG-13. If you haven't seen Moulin Rouge before, it is about Christian, a bohemian writer who moves to Paris with dreams of creating art and falling in love. Unfortunately, he falls in love with a courtesan at the Moulin Rouge, Satine. The two try to get Christian's writing career and Satine's acting career off the ground by staging a play at the Moulin Rouge, but they have to hide their romance from an evil duke who is financing the whole thing.
So a rom com.
Sure, ish. Well, and it's funny because the first time I saw this was in the theater when it came out. My friends and I would always walk to the movie theater after finals that last week of school. So this was definitely coming out around then. The movie theater was right across the street from the middle school and high school. And I guarantee you, we went into Moulin Rouge thinking it was kind of like a rom com. Um, it was definitely marketed like a romance. I don't know if we were expecting what we got because like I've mentioned it before, I would always just go see whatever teen movie rom-com was out every weekend with my girlfriends. So this was surely marketed like that. I'm sure they were playing up the romance aspect between Ewan McGregor and Nicole Kidman. And I feel like they were both really popular at the time. Like still very popular obviously, but I could see them being marketed like this it couple. I don't know.
Yeah, I can sort of remember the trailers and TV spots when that came out, and I definitely know Ewan McGregor was pretty hot at the time. I think Star Wars, like the prequels, had just come out not too long prior to this,
Mhm.
which I think made him a little bit bigger in America.
Mhm.
And I feel like Nicole Kidman's always just been big. I don't know.
I do feel like, and I could be wrong, but I feel like this was sort of the beginning of Nicole Kidman being really popular for being a good actress or like
Yeah.
being considered a good actress instead of just being Tom Cruise's wife and being just kind of like a tabloid staple.
Mm.
I kind of remember this being the beginning of her gaining a reputation as an actress that picks interesting roles. And, we can argue about whether I know some people really don't like Nicole Kidman. I'm fine with her. Um, but I feel like this was the start of her usually getting awards attention year after year, because I'm pretty sure she was nominated for Best Actress for this. She also did a lot of like weird artsy indie things after this. This was, I feel, the beginning of her big career breakout that allowed her to do like weirder things. And I feel like up until now, what was her biggest movie? Probably stuff with Tom Cruise.
Yeah, probably. I think everything you just said answers a question I have later in my notes saying, like, did this make these actors bigger? I recognize Nicole Kidman from Batman Forever
Oh,
as
right.
as a Batman fan. She was just Bruce Wayne's psychologist and love interest, but she
Mhm.
was there to be probably a pretty face. I don't remember her acting super seriously in that movie, but
Right.
also
She
to be
was
fair, it was a Joel Schumacher Batman movie, so you know,
Mhm. I feel like she was getting the girlfriend roles up
yes,
until this. I feel like this gave her enough of a career that she was able to make like smaller things, artistic things, weirder things. Obviously, she was still in blockbusters after this. Like she did Stepford Wives and Bewitched. So I'm not saying it was all like super artsy stuff, but I do feel like Ewan McGregor became more mainstream after this movie.
I think so, probably.
I feel like I knew about him from like Train Spotting and
Hmm.
more things that maybe you could argue were more indie.
Yeah, I still think he was coming off the fame of Star Wars, but
That's
now
that's
he's
true.
in a bigger role, a leading role,
Hmm.
singing.
I don't think that anyone knew either of them could sing before this.
Most actors are singing in this film. I tried to look that up. I think most of them are
Hmm.
actually doing their own singing.
Yeah, and I know there's a lot of, like, controversy over whether this is, like, actually a good musical or not, which we can touch on. I did wanna point out that Ewan McGregor did film a movie in my little town in Pennsylvania when we still lived in Pennsylvania. I did not get to meet him. My road was shut down for a few hours every day because it was, like, a period piece, and they had to bring in, like, old cars and stuff and park them on the road. It was probably the most excitement that town's, like, ever had. I know that he went to our local coffee shop in the like, every day, and the owners got to talk to him a lot.
That's
Um,
cool.
yeah, it's called American Pastoral. I've still never seen it. I think it's a Philip K. Dick novel. I could be wrong about that, but
I think the first time I saw this movie was in high school. We had a film class that was like a elective credit. This is like the time period when I really started deep diving into movies. I do remember watching it in school, in high school, and rewatching it this time. I'm like, oh, some of these scenes are a little, interesting. We got to watch this in school.
yeah, I'm
Um,
actually kinda surprised. Although
they're
it wasn't rated R, so
right. Again, we were all on our way to being adults. We had to take it seriously, but
so Moulin Rouge opens with the opening credits being presented as if we're watching them at an old school movie theater, like, we kinda see them on a screen. There's, like, a little orchestra playing with a conductor. I guess now it makes me think of, like, when you would have silent movies and you'd have a live orchestra playing.
yeah,
I don't think I understood it at the time necessarily if that's what it was referencing.
I got that feeling from that as well as kind of foreshadowing towards the end. It's like you know, a play or musical number.
Yeah, this whole beginning felt really unique to me at the time. We sort of zoom into Paris and the neighborhood in particular where the Moulin Rouge is. It's black and white. I feel like there's almost a collage like look to it. It has this layered look where like certain things are moving at sometimes and other objects are still. We open to with Toulouse-Lautrec kind of singing our introduction of like there was a boy, a very strange enchanted boy, which watching this again, maybe he was strange. Was he enchanted? I guess he was good at writing poetry, maybe that's the argument there?
It just sounds fancier and bohemian.
I guess, yeah, 'cause it felt funny to me watching this back thinking of that descriptor because I feel like Ewan McGregor's character is just a guy that
Oh yeah,
kinda,
he's a
like, got in over his head.
yeah.
But still, again, this all felt so different to me. Again, we're, like, zooming through the city, we zoom into Christian's, like, apartment, and this is Ewan McGregor's character. We can tell things have already happened. We can tell he's distraught. And all we really hear him say is that the woman he loves is dead. But even the word dead, like you have to listen kind of hard for it. So I don't even know if I picked it up the first time, but I was hooked. I was in it. I was like, this is already, this already feels like a ride I want to go on, so to speak.
Yeah, the beginning definitely feels like a little bit of a ride. A
hmm
lot of times that layered look you're talking about,
hmm
this obvious green screen background is done to
hmm
look fake because it kind of looks like some sort of tapestry, right?
hmm
And at the beginning, you get the singing narration in the opening, but
hmm
then you go to Ewan McGregor, who's at a typewriter. He starts narrating, and there's tight shots of him, but they're big open shots of the city as we're zooming through it, and it's just kind of a big chaotic mess, but also not too busy. You understand what's going on, but it's so fast you have to catch your breath.
Yeah, and I like that in particular, like, a lot of the pace of this movie is, like, really fast, really frenetic, like, cuts happening so fast that you're almost not even sure what you just saw, but then when we get into Christian's apartment, we definitely slow down, we have longer takes, I think even Christian's, like, moving in slow-mo sometimes, and it's almost like the way it's shot is telling us how we're supposed to feel at different parts because like we slow down, Christian's telling us this horrible thing that happened to him, but without too much info yet. But we basically learned that Christian arrived in Paris wanting to be an artist. It's the year 1899. He's into the whole bohemian art scene. He wants to be a writer specifically, and all these bohemian artists have this mantra about trust, beauty, freedom, and love. They call themselves the children of the revolution, which I assume is like the artistic revolution. I sort of understood what they were going for here, but it's
Yeah.
hard as a teenager watching this, especially a teenager who was like a drama kid. I was so into this. Like, this was really tailor-made for someone like me who is like, "I'm gonna work in the arts." I could never imagine having, like, an office job. That sounded awful. So, high school me, yes, we are la vie bohème.
Fair enough.
But Christian really quickly meets this eccentric group of artists. Toulouse-Lautrec is I feel like the main character of this group, who really was a real person in Paris at the time. I believe he was an artist, but they're all rehearsing a play that, again, we're getting the really quick cuts, the really like short explanations. We're trying really hard to keep up, but I think also it's representative of how everyone involved in the play doesn't really exactly know what they're doing either, because they're kind of rewriting the play and trying different things as they go along too.
Artist being artist. I want to point out that the actor playing Toulouse, John Leguizamo,
Mhm.
which he's playing someone who's very short. I don't know if this character in real life was
Yeah,
that short,
I think he was a dwarf.
but he also has like uh, a fake nose on. So at first, I didn't even realize who it was as the actor, and he also has a different accent and a little bit of a lisp. My point being is Leguizamo doesn't I feel like doesn't get enough credit as a character actor.
Mhm.
Which, if we want to throw it back a little bit, I remember loving him as Clown in the Spawn movie. It
Oh
was
my
awesome.
gosh.
Yeah, again, I think he's just a fun character actor. I also wanted to point out, for personal reasons, that Toulouse was an artist of many talents, one of them being a characterist.
Oh, cool. I didn't
Yeah,
realize that. Oh, he was a child of the revolution.
it sure was.
He lived for his art, I guess. But yeah, I think the only reference I had for John Leguizamo when I first saw Moulin Rouge was Super Mario Brothers, the movie.
No.
I
Oh
know.
my god. I blocked that from my brain. Way to tap into that.
Yeah. Well, now it's funny being 2025 and me being a parent. I think of him as being from Encanto. And it's funny too, because when they performed one of the songs from Encanto, I want to say at the Oscars, he introduced the performance and he was like, "Yeah, it's weird. They didn't want me to sing live. Why?" And and you could tell in Encanto he's not really singing in the songs. He's sort of like talking to
Yeah,
a beat. But so I'm actually kind of wondering, like, if he's really singing as Toulouse in Moulin Rouge, because that's all I could think of watching this back is him joking that he was like the worst singer in Encanto.
interesting.
Yeah, I kind of forgot he was in a musical. I wasn't sure how to discuss the musical numbers in this movie because these songs are all covers or like bits and pieces of other existing songs. So, for example, Christian ends up saving the day with this play they're rehearsing because he ends up riffing on The Sound of Music. And, in this universe, The Sound of Music doesn't exist. This is Christian's own idea. And they all think it's amazing. And this is when they're all like, oh, Christian is this like wonderful, gifted writer.
I think for intensive purposes for the film,
Hmm.
the writers and director, I feel like used things that might have inspired them, and they wanted to share that with us, possibly.
Hmm.
Yeah, they're mashup or medleys. Yeah.
I will admit, too, that the first time I saw this, I did not know some of the songs,
Hmm.
which we can touch on later. I just wanted to point out like how many weird little pop culture things there are in this movie, because we get to a little scene of them all deciding they're going to do this play, go to the Moulin Rouge and try to get it financed by the owner. They all drink absinthe together, and this is like their big bonding experience. And the green fairy on the bottle comes to life, and the green fairy is Kylie Minogue,
Oh,
which is she Australian? I feel like maybe.
I don't
Maybe that's
know.
why Baz Luhrmann is Australian. I think
Yeah,
he does really try to cast. Australians when he can, that would make a lot of sense. Let me look it up. Yeah, Australian. But they're the just little pop culture references, mostly, I guess, in the songs and different lines, but this was more of a cameo. She never really hit as big in America as she is like in Europe and Australia. They get to the Moulin Rouge, and again, we have the really frantic cuts. There's so many dancers on the floor, men in their like top hats and coats, like dancing with the dancers. Everyone's in different costumes, and it's one of those things where they're going so fast that you almost don't understand what you're seeing until it's already flashed across the screen. Again, to me, this was like nothing I had seen before, but I'm used to teen rom-coms at this point. But yeah, well, it's funny like watching it back now. I'm like, why did I think this was like so entirely original? But for me, it really was. And again, like it's a raucous atmosphere. They're drunk on absinthe. So like it's really putting you in that mindset. And then they start mixing in like some slow-mo shots of things they want you to focus on. And then we speed right back up. I do remember they're playing a version of Lady Marmalade that ended up being this big hit off the soundtrack. But I remember this being such a huge song.
It was huge.
Yes. I also remember, which I thought of during our gladiator discussion, they did a Pepsi commercial where they were in like a gladiator arena.
I kind of remember that.
I vaguely remember Pink being in it, so I don't know if it was Pink and like a bunch of other female singers or if it was Pink and this specific group of female singers, like because of this single.
Yeah, the video was big. They performed on different award shows.
I actually remember the VMAs, like them being on the VMAs. I haven't thought about the VMAs in a really long time.
Well, I don't think MTV has either.
So this is where we meet Harold Zidler, the owner of the Moulin Rouge. We understand this as Toulouse is going to ask Harold for financing for the play, but Harold is actually getting financing from a duke, which we're just going to call the duke because I actually like have no idea what his like real name is. But Harold is getting the financing from the Duke. So Toulouse thinks they need to impress Harold. Harold knows they need to impress the Duke. This eventually turns into a case of mistaken identity. We meet Satine, Nicole Kidman's character. She does a whole performance to Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend. She's known as the Sparkling Diamond. She's definitely the star of the Moulin Rouge.
A few things. One, I
Mhm.
wanted to point out that Harold, just between the eye makeup and the facial hair, is
Mhm.
screaming Mayor of Munchkinland.
Yeah. He has like the rosy cheeks.
On the top hat and tails
Mhm. Yeah.
and the belly.
Yeah.
My question is, though, and maybe Toulouse and the gang don't know this, but why are they going to the Moulin Rouge to get financing when it doesn't seem like that establishment is like, obviously if they're looking for financing, they're not doing that well either.
Yeah, my understanding was that Toulouse did not realize that.
Hmm.
Because I was thinking about this too, because again, you really start thinking about these things when you have to take notes on a movie and watch it this closely. I think they just didn't realize because, as we move through this scene, Toulouse is very excited because he's gotten Christian a meeting with Satine, thinking Christian is just going to convince her with his artistic ability to be in the show. And Harold has gotten the Duke a private meeting with Satine so that Satine can convince him she's a great actress and deserves this show to be financed. I think Toulouse just bulldozed through everything, probably,
Yeah.
and wasn't really listening. But we see this mistaken identity happen where Harold is on stage with Satine and they're able to privately talk a little bit while the performance is going on. And he points out the Duke. She thinks he's pointing to Christian. So she's kind of like, okay, this guy is like actually young and handsome. That's better than I thought.
Right. Yeah.
You could tell she's like surprised, but like, okay, cool. I do like the part where Toulouse accidentally spills something on the Duke, I think, and the Duke's making a really big deal out of it, and Toulouse like he's just like waving a handkerchief in front of him saying, "Clean yourself off, you bourgeois pig. You have to have the vocabulary of the Bohemians." I don't know.
Good old Bohemians.
But yeah, to your point, why would Toulouse be so rude if he realized this guy was financing the play, was the actual financier? I think he just doesn't I think Toulouse is, like, not in the real world, I think his head's just in the clouds.
Yeah, because they want to convince Satine to convince Harold either to finance or just maybe let them put a show on at the Moulin Rouge.
Yeah.
That's the other thing I was thinking. It's like maybe they just need a place to start. I
Mhm,
don't
they
know.
need a stage and they know Harold. So at the very end of Satine's number, she gasps and faints. It's very obvious because she's, like, on a swing, high above the crowd, and someone has to catch her. Harold's able to play this off like it was just a grand exit or something, but we did see a little teeny bit of foreshadowing that eventually we find is a very short clip of Satine's eventual death. There's a lot more foreshadowing in this than I realized of her dying. I mean, not to mention the whole part where when the movie begins, Christian says the woman
Well,
he loves is dead.
we already
Uh,
know. Yeah.
yeah. Backstage, everyone's trying to help Satine. It's clear that this has like happened a few times at this point. We eventually see her coughing up blood. We are supposed to assume this is more serious than a fainting spell. I like this little scene of Satine talking to Marie, who is kind of like the den mother of all the dancers at the Moulin Rouge. Part of why they want a show at the Moulin Rouge is for Satine to become a real actress, as she says. And she and Marie are talking about how she'll be the next Sarah Bernhardt, which I believe she was the first celebrity. I think she was a stage actress. I'm gonna look it up now because I'm gonna misspeak. She was in plays. She was French. She was in a lot of plays, but I remember her being the first like star, like the first popular actress that people could name, and people would go to shows to see her specifically.
Okay.
And I think Satine even says, "Do you think I could really be like the great Sarah?" And that's what I think that's what they called it, the divine Sarah, sorry. But I always thought this was kind of funny because they make a big deal of Marie trying to get her into this like really pretty red dress, like they're doing up the corset. And then in the next scene, she's meeting Christian in her private quarters and she is not in the red dress.
Right. I literally typed, "What happened to the red dress?" This is a big
Mhm.
deal, putting it on and getting all done up, and it looked really nice. And then it's just not there anymore.
Mhm. But Satine has this thing saying she's going to fly away from the Moulin Rouge and be a real actress, and this is the concept of flying away is something her character repeats a lot, but it always makes me think of Love Actually. Have you seen that?
Yes.
Okay. I wanna say the character's name is Sarah, but I'm not sure. I think it's Laura Linney's character, the one with the brother who's in an institution, and when he calls her she'll say she's not busy and that she's like a bird far, far away. And that's all I can think of. So Christian and Satine meet in her room. Satine still thinks he's a duke at this point. Christian thinks he's there to impress her with his poetry. Satine assumes poetry is a euphemism for sex, and she is overacting so much that I feel like it's difficult to watch this scene.
Yeah, this scene was, it just kept getting worse, like a train wreck. It's funny at first because she's, again, the red dress is gone. The woman in the red dress is gone. And that'll be funny later, I promise. And now she's in lingerie, laying in the bed, and there's these dumb lines as the audience knows that this is a miscommunication. And like you said, the euphemisms. He's like, I prefer to do this standing. It's, not normal, but once you get used to it, you'll like it. And just all these weird things. And like, okay, whatever. And she even like runs up to him and like grabs him and throws him on the bed. And he gets all flustered, starts singing again like he did in the apartment. And that's when she's just like, "Oh, poetry. Oh, you really like poetry." He's thinking, I guess she thinks this is his like kink, I guess.
Right.
She starts like writhing and rolling around on the floor. I had so much secondhand embarrassment for both of them. I was like,
Yes.
dear
Well,
Lord.
I do like Ewan McGregor's facial expressions because, again, he does not think he's there to meet a courtesan. She thinks she's doing her job as a courtesan, and he's just like, "Wow, okay,
Yeah.
ma'am." Like, I think despite maybe how this scene lands, you can't say that Nicole Kidman wasn't absolutely going for it.
Yeah, that's a way to put it.
But yes, Christian eventually breaks into song. He sings a version of my song. Elton John, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So when I was seeing this as a teenager, I had no idea that was an Elton John song. I was not particularly cultured, I guess. But they're kind of dancing through this like dream version of Paris. They're like up in the clouds. I really like that Harold's face is the moon and he's like singing back up. I just think that's a really like silly touch and I enjoy it.
It reminds me of, oh God, now it escapes me. Like Trip to the Moon, right?
Yeah, Trip to the Moon.
The face in the moon, obviously, but it
Mhm.
just, I know it's Harold's, but it just has that same look.
Yes, exactly. And it's funny because I recently showed that movie to my son. And for anyone who doesn't know, A Trip to the Moon, have you ever seen the Smashing Pumpkins music video where the rocket hits the face in the moon? That's what they got that from. But Méliès was a very early filmmaker, French silent films. Trip to the Moon is, I don't know, 15 minutes long, maybe, if that. I showed it to my son, and he decided that it's too scary when the moon gets hit in the face by the rocket. So
Huh.
he did not enjoy it. He liked the Martians, or I guess the aliens. I don't know. You can't call them Martians because they're on the moon. Again, younger me loved this whole sequence. Like it's very sweeping and romantic. And at the very end of the song, Satine says that she can't believe she's in love with a rich, talented, handsome duke. And Christian's like, I'm not a duke. And this is when she realizes that he's a writer and the music like abruptly stops, like record scratch stops.
Yeah.
And she even says something like, "Oh my god, you're not one of Toulouse's like hopelessly penniless artist friends." And he's like, "Yeah, that's exactly what I am."
Yeah. Here I am. I thought it was, I mean, obviously it's a movie about romance. I thought that just you go from this crazy not sex scene to this musical number, and she goes from I have to, I don't know, do what I need to do to get this financing to I'm in love with
Mhm.
this guy. Oh, but
Yeah,
wait, he's broke. Maybe I don't.
exactly. Yeah. Her feelings are very fickle.
Yeah. And
Like in the
yeah.
span of 5 minutes, maybe we've gone from like, you're just a client to I love you to like, oh, never mind. So, right at that moment when Satine is trying to shove Christian out the door, she realizes the Duke is at the door. This leads to a whole comical thing of Christian trying to hide from the Duke, like a lot of physical comedy going on in this scene. And I do like this part where Satine is facing the Duke, singing him the song that Christian just sang because she's trying to explain to the Duke, like, these are some of the words our writer wrote for the play. Aren't they wonderful? And she's hoping if she holds his attention, Christian can sneak out. The Duke is between the two of them. He doesn't know Christian's creeping up behind him. And Christian and Satine are both like coming up from a kneeling position, like at the same time, if that makes sense. And then they
Hmm.
meet, like their eyes meet over the Duke. Except the problem is the Duke very obviously falls in love with Satine now at this point.
It's a very powerful song.
Yeah, apparently so. But Christian, I think he opens the door and finds the Duke's bodyguard right there, so he still can't get out. Satine makes a big fuss about how the Duke needs to leave and she will sleep with him opening night because she knows she just needs to like get him out of the room so that he's not furious that Christian is there. I like that one of the ways Christian tries to hide is by like going into a corner and covering his eyes with a lampshade.
Yeah, that was good. It's all
Um
very silly. Duke and Satine kind of start getting physical in the romantic sense, and Christian has still not had left. And he's like kind of creeping up on the bed now, hovering over them. And that's when she's like, oh, well, we can do this on opening night because this weird man is staring at us.
you could tell like he was judging her that she was going to sleep with this guy. I mean, it's her job. I don't know. I feel like Christian is what is the word I'm looking for?
Naive.
He's naive, yes. Christian hasn't had to, like, think about how to make a living before, maybe, is the impression I get, and I'm not saying everyone falls to the level of, like, Harold calls them creatures of the underworld, something like that.
Yeah,
I feel like throughout this whole movie, there's a theme of Christian not understanding that this is how Satine makes a living and, like, keeps a roof over her head.
right.
Yeah, and this is the start of that in a way because she has been promised to the Duke. The Duke thinks he's sleeping with her. He paid for this. And Christian like has a moment where he could escape, I think is what you're talking about. And he
Yeah.
stops to be like, kind of gives her this look like, oh my God, you're really doing this? And she's like, oh, well, we can't sleep together until opening night. And she kind of looks at Christian like, are you happy now? But also, Christian is hung up on the fact that she just told him that she loved him. So Christian is like, "Well, wait, what about that? Why would you sleep with this guy if you just said you love me?"
Still
Um,
unaware of what her job is.
right, but, like, what's the joke? Like, "You must think the strippers actually like you," or something, like,
Yep.
that kind of a thing, yep, mhm.
I mean,
Yeah,
that's exactly what this is.
Christian is just, I feel like, a bit too innocent for this world. He just wants to make art, and he doesn't think there's, like, a downside to anything.
I feel like he didn't do any research when he moved to the largest Bohemian population. I mean, we get a little bit at the beginning, the very beginning of his dad just yelling, like,
Yeah,
don't move there, it's full of sin and blah, 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 blah. And we're made to feel based on the shot and just the actor screaming at us that the dad is, of course, being a dad and he doesn't want his son to dream big and love big and stuff like that.
yeah.
But if he would have paid attention a little bit.
Yeah, I think Christian is sort of this country bumpkin that like doesn't understand how to survive in the big city. So anyway, Satine and Christian are alone in the room, and Satine is kind of giving Christian what for because he messed up this whole interaction with the Duke. She faints again. The Duke pops back in because he forgot his hat, and he finds Christian like standing over Satine because she has fainted. And what he says something like, "Funny business?" Or something like that, that was really, like, silly to me.
Yeah, well, he's not standing over her. He's like on the bed with her because he's like lightly tapping her on the face, trying to get her to wake up because
Right,
she
yeah.
just passed out. But
Mhm.
it could also look like he's being really romantic with her.
Satine comes to, just in time, to explain to the Duke that this is the writer of the play he's going to be financing, and then, like, Toulouse and all the other guys see what's going on and, like, just drop into the room to, like, back up this version of events.
Yeah, because they
Um,
were just being creepy voyeurs outside of the window the whole time. So
yes, yes, as was Harold. It's all a little creepy.
oh yeah, he's like across the way with a telescope or something.
Mhm.
So up until this point, it was like nagging the back of my brain where like the Duke looks so familiar. Harold looks very familiar too. But the Duke, I looked him up and I couldn't find anything. Like, why does he look so familiar? Maybe he's one of those British actors or something like that. Random small character in Mission Impossible too. He's like the bad guy's henchman. It was driving me crazy for a long time because I literally until the scene I was like, "This is this like Guy Pearce with prosthetics on? He kind of looks like we have Guy Pearce at home." I don't know.
It
Uh,
looks like we have Guy Pearce at home. You know what? I did watch The Brutalist recently, and I could see that, especially since Guy Pearce plays like rich asshole kind of role in The Brutalist.
I like the scene where Toulouse, the gang, and Harold all come in and they do a little number to convince the Duke to do the show, and they're like coming up with the plot by the seat of their pants in front of the Duke.
Right. Yeah, I do enjoy the comedic aspect of this movie. Like, I understand why a lot of people feel like maybe the songs don't land or like this is not the best singing you could have in a musical, whatever. But I do enjoy this whole, I don't know if comedy of errors is the right way to put it, but just, yeah, like coming up with all of this on the fly. There's always someone misunderstanding something or someone coming up with a cover at the nick of time. I did want to point out that Harold is also the actor that plays Bridget Jones's dad. in Bridget Jones's Diary. It was very jarring to me the first time I saw Bridget Jones's Diary because he's just like a normal guy. Like, he doesn't have the crazy facial hair, he's
Yeah.
not all made up, you know what I mean? But you could still tell it's him because of his eyes.
Yes. I realized I recognized him from Game of Thrones and Harry Potter.
Oh, I had no idea he was in Game of Thrones. That's almost weirder to me because I just now I see him as just like Bridget Jones's like lovable dad who's like just this kind of boring middle-aged guy.
Yeah, I definitely like him in this role. He's very fun
Mhm.
and animated, not so
Yeah,
serious.
definitely. We end this scene by Christian telling us the Bohemians had their show and Harold had his investor. I think Christian is like back in his apartment and he's can see out like toward the Moulin Rouge. He ends up going over to talk to Satine and ask if she really loves him. And she says this was just an act because she thought he was the Duke. And
Hmm.
again, like I understand she said she loved him. I understand it felt real and I understand for his character it does end up being real, but Christian's just like this sweet little innocent like like I don't know. I keep thinking of him as like just having come off the farm or something.
Yeah, I mean, she literally breaks it down for him. She says, I of course I said I loved you. I thought you had money.
Yeah, exactly.
You thought I loved you. I thought you had money. And see, here we are.
And I think there is some inferences about she would make a great actress because like she already has to act for her job anyway. She has to act like
Yeah,
she's into every guy that she comes across. But they do another musical number where they admit their feelings for each other and they decide to be secret lovers.
yes, secret lovers.
Yes.
This scene's really cool. There's a lot of blue in this movie. Everything's blue and like abruptly so.
Mhm.
But the blue makes Satine and her red hair and lipstick pop off the screen. There are lights on the windmill of Moulin Rouge, which stick out a lot too because of this.
Mhm.
And then this is another good little mashup musical number with a bunch of songs that are talking about people loving each other.
Oh, she's back in the red dress for this, isn't she?
I believe so.
Yeah.
It just disappeared for a while.
It's funny that you mentioned this movie as being very blue because I always think of it as very red because the Moulin Rouge is red. I mean, Satine has red hair. Usually she's wearing red lipstick. A lot of her outfits are red. The interior and exterior of the Moulin Rouge are very red and her bedroom. So I hadn't thought of it that way, but you're right. Like they're usually doing things against a very
Mhm.
blue backdrop.
There are two colors, blue and red.
Although, admittedly, I feel for Christian's character development, this is not great that he is, in fact, the only person that Satine has legitimately fallen in love with. Because, like, this is still going to add to him not understanding what a courtesan is.
Yeah, because it, it makes what she just said false. Like, I
Yeah.
was doing my job. Oh, I do love you. And he's like, oh, see, I told you.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
If you just sing at the woman hard enough, she'll come around.
Or recite some poetry.
There you go. So we find out after this scene that Harold has given the Duke the deeds to the Moulin Rouge. So that's kind of his collateral to make sure that after the show, Satine is his. Satine belongs to the Duke. So we see that the Duke thinks of Satine as exclusively belonging to him now because he's
Yeah,
putting up the money for the show.
yeah, a few things here. One, I feel that we get the idea the Duke knows something is afoot somehow between Satine and Christian because he's doing this in a way that seems very like he's obviously the villain of the film, but he goes like very villain here in the scene. He even introduced henchmen in the background in the shadows, like, oh, we'll make sure this happens. And so Harold's in a tough spot now. He's got the deed. He wants Satine, and he at one point like screams, "I don't like other people touching my things."
Mhm.
So this is another man confused at what Satine does for a living.
So I agree with that, but I think Satine being exclusively his is part of this deal that Harold has made.
Right. It's before they make the deal, and even so, it's still like part of
Mhm.
her job.
I was wondering that too throughout the movie, like, I know the Duke makes this argument to Satine multiple times that he can offer her a life of stability and comfort, but he can't seriously think that she would actually love him just because of that, or maybe he does. I don't know.
But yeah, I think she's duped them both
I don't know.
with saying "I love you" because she got paid to say "I love you."
But we see them in rehearsals. Christian's play is about a courtesan and a penniless sitar player, but the courtesan is promised to the evil Maharaja. So we see how this is paralleling the movie, the play within the movie. The tagline, I guess, or the thing they keep repeating is the greatest thing you'll ever learn is just to love and be loved in return. Their very bohemian
Hmm.
way of thinking.
Oh yeah.
We have a montage of Christian and Satine being together and like making out while constantly being interrupted by the Duke, and Satine constantly making excuses as to why she can't spend time with the Duke. Usually it's because she's supposedly rehearsing with the writer. I feel like either they're really lucky or like the Duke is really stupid or both.
Yeah. I mean, I think they're pushing their luck here because the
Mhm.
parallel of the play to what's actually happening. They are literally being shown makeup smeared all over their faces in front of the Duke. And he's like,
Yes.
"Oh, okay, you're rehearsing. I don't know. You guys must really like cherry Kool-Aid, I guess. I don't know." I guess what's also confusing is that if he has the deed and they're talking about, we'll wait till opening night, bro. You're delaying opening night by interrupting, so go away. So it's to me, it's like both. He's being like very
Mhm.
pushy and stupid. They're trying to hide their love, but if he's to get what he is promised, step back and let them put on the play because then you get what you paid for.
But yeah, to your point, there's a part where Christian is very obviously walking away with lipstick on his face. I don't know why they thought they could get away with this. They were, or maybe they had gotten away with it for enough time that they started getting sloppy. I don't know.
So all these other times we're talking about, they're in her room, I think, and he just barges in with like, "We're gonna go on a picnic or camping or fishing or whatever," and they're like, "Oh no, we're rehearsing." So now they actually are rehearsing on stage, and they like go away to a loft and are like aggressively kissing. And
Hmm.
Harold sees them, but as they run away, unbeknownst to them that they were just caught. Whoever is, I think maybe Toulouse, I think he's the sitar, also narrator.
Hmm.
As they're like making out and he is spying on them, they say, "Act two, the lovers are discovered."
Yep.
So the movie is through the play within the movie is very on the nose with a lot of the plot points.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. So to your point, Harold discovers that they're together because the Duke is complaining that Satine hasn't been spending enough time with him. He is questioning her feelings for him. Again, sir, you paid for her to have feelings for you. And while Harold is having this discussion with the Duke, he like spots them up in that loft making out because they're not as hidden as they think they are. They really took some chances with that. Harold ends up confronting Satine and tells her to end it with Christian. I do like this part where she's trying to convince Harold that it's nothing, that he's just like he has a crush on her and she's just playing along, and Harold yells that he saw them together. I like that Harold is kind of like a clown. Like he looks clownish, he's very silly. He obviously is a more comedic role, but he could also be really scary.
Yeah,
I really like this turn. And Harold explains to Satine that the Duke is putting up a lot of money to make her a star. But I feel like this is when he tells her that he holds the deeds to the Moulin Rouge. So,
I
like,
think so.
if Satine screws this up, everyone loses out. Like, they're all kicked out of their home and their livelihood and everything.
Which shame on Harold for being that dumb to give him the deed. Like I know they needed money, but then if you fail in any sort of aspect,
Yeah.
worst comes to worst, if Harold still had the deed and none of this, the play or anything, if it all fell apart,
Hmm.
he could at least sell the Moulin Rouge. Like
Yeah.
actually sell it, not just give the deed away.
Yeah. My only thought is
Silly
maybe they
Harold.
were in like dire financial straits and this was maybe they weren't doing well. I don't know. Even though it didn't look that way when the whole crowd was there in the beginning.
Yeah, I think they're okay.
Yeah, you're like, "No, they have money, it's fine." We then go to a scene where Harold's trying to convince the Duke that Satine really does like him, and they sing "Like a Virgin" by Madonna. Mhm.
Yeah, these are dancers dancing around to Like a Virgin while Harold and the Duke are singing the song. Yeah, like they're like at a big dinner table and they're serving dessert, and they have these voluptuous gelatin molds that they're literally like wiggling in front of the camera.
Yep.
Like, what the hell are we watching? Like, this was like the one musical number I felt that was like, I could have done without.
I get that, yes. I understand why at the time a lot of people thought this was, like, too silly, of a movie in general, but, yeah, this part in particular. Um,
It's also creepy too. It's very dark, like physically dark in the scene,
mhm.
and as the song is going on, like Harold is playing the role of Satine, kind of, and the Duke is
Yeah,
like prancing around trying to like
get at him,
get
yeah.
at her. Yeah, I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah. Well, they do call it the Gothic Tower, this place where he is. It's almost like a castle. The reason that Harold has to go smooth things over with the Duke is because Satine had another fainting spell. I guess they finally call a doctor in because we learn that Satine is dying of consumption, and Harold decides not to tell her. So I think only Harold and Marie know, and the doctor.
I think so.
So that's a choice. Satine eventually goes to Christian's apartment to tell him they have to end things. And I really like how this is shot. She's sitting on his bed, and he can tell that she has something serious to talk to him about. So he sits down next to her, but they're facing opposite ways. I just like how they're having this breakup conversation. They're obviously not understanding each other, and visually, they're sitting next to each other, but facing away from each other. Like they're not in sync visually or in their conversation.
And it's
Mhm.
kind of physically showing us that they are heading in opposite directions as well.
Mostly that, again, Christian doesn't understand that she's a courtesan. And so Satine is trying to break this off because she now knows that if she messes things up with the Duke, like it affects everyone because of him, having the deeds to the Moulin Rouge. Kind of feel like if she would maybe explain the severity of everything to Christian, maybe he would have been a little less annoying about everything.
I don't know if he would ever get it, if I'm being honest, but also not quite fair of Harold to put all of that on Satine when it was his
Sure.
choice to give out the deed.
Yes,
Like, you know
agreed.
what, Harold, you sleep with the Duke.
He almost did with that, like,
Oh,
a
that's true. Yeah,
virgin number, yeah.
he almost got.
Yes, he did. Yeah, I'm picturing that in my head now when Harold has, like, the tablecloth over his head, and he sort of, like, screams singing like a virgin while the Duke chases him around this room.
Yeah, that was weird.
So, Christian's solution to all of this is that he's going to write a secret song for him and Satine to remember that they love each other no matter what happens. It's called Come What May. They put this in the play naturally.
Right, not so secret. We're doing a secret song that everyone's gonna hear. Yeah, I get the idea is like it's secret in meaning,
Yes.
sure.
Yes.
But when you continually sing it to each other in front of everybody with your cherry Kool-Aid lips and just the puppy dog love in your eyes, it's very
Yes.
obvious. In fact, because of what's about to happen.
Yeah, they're really not good at not making direct eye contact with each other while they're rehearsing. And the Duke is there like front and center for every rehearsal because he's the one paying for this thing. So yes, while they are watching the rehearsal of Come What May, I wanna say Christian is, like, off to the side playing piano or maybe just following along with the script, I don't remember exactly, but Satine is up on stage, and instead of looking at the lead actor, which you would think she would be doing, she is just making eyes at Christian, it is so obvious.
Yeah.
Yeah, this random dancer who has never seemed to like Satine, like, I think earlier we just see her make a joke when Satine faints during her big number. She just pops by and tells the Duke, "This ending is silly. Why would the courtesan go for the penniless writer over the rich Maharaja? Oops, I mean the penniless sitar player."
What? a bitch. Keep
Mhm.
your nose to yourself. Stay out of people's business.
Mhm.
Also, how dumb is this Duke? Because I figured he was kind of seeing this the whole time. I said this earlier when he's like yelling about the D's, like, no one's gonna touch my things. And like, I felt like he was onto them then. And then for
Yeah.
like 30 more minutes, I'm like, nope, he has no idea.
Yeah. No, exactly, especially, like I said, with them making this obvious eye contact with each other. How does he not see this?
Hmm.
And how often do you rehearse with the writer only and, like, not the other actors? I I don't know, whatever, but yes, this random dancer is a bitch, but also probably does not realize that she just put her job in jeopardy by letting this slip. But I love that because of this comment she makes, they finish this final song. It's this big grand thing. It's loud, it's colorful, everyone's on stage, and then it stops. It's silent, and the Duke is sitting completely alone in this big room and says, "I don't like this ending."
Very tiny and meek, but
Yes.
still, because of who he is, it holds weight.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. I was gonna say the Duke is kind of this silly little man
Hmm.
that almost doesn't seem to have a spine at times, except for, like, that one part where he yelled, like you said. So even him the way he says, "I don't like this ending," it sounds like him almost making a suggestion and not throwing his weight around.
And then he explains why he doesn't like the ending, and he's basically, because apparently he didn't get what's going on here, and he's like testing the waters. And he's like, well, I don't get why she would fall for someone who is penniless when she could have someone like the Maharaja and be offered a lifetime of security.
Mhm,
And it just, kind of makes me think of other picks we've had in this season. It definitely made me think, like, I put that quote in there right here because
mhm.
thought of Glenn in The Wedding Singer.
Yep. I
Um,
never thought I would be thinking of the wedding singer during this scene, but yes, we've had a few conversations about wealth versus security as a running theme in certain movies. So, yes, we see the Duke is, like, catching on to things now thanks to that dancer tipping him off, and he's like, "No, because Satine's going to end up with me, so in the play, she should end up with the Maharaja," basically. Christian fucks this up further by yelling, "Because she doesn't love you," at the Duke, and then he tries to backtrack by saying, like, "Oh, him, she doesn't love the Maharaja," but, damage is done, sir.
yeah, whoops.
So Satine immediately jumps into like professional mode and she offers to spend the night with the Duke and discuss the show with him, kind of like, let me explain to you why this is a fitting ending. Christian is predictably jealous of this arrangement she makes with the Duke, even though he had promised her never to get jealous, which was a stupid thing to promise.
Yeah. But also, though, Satine smooths it over by when she's leaving the stage. She doesn't offer to explain the ending. She says that the Duke is right and we need to change the ending, like making him feel important and smart.
Oh,
And
that's true.
obviously, like, well, if because the play within the movie is a parallel, and if the ending of the play changes, then real life in the
Mhm.
Satine will actually be with the Maharaja, aka the Duke.
Mhm. Yes. Satine agrees to spend the night with the Duke and, smooth things over. Christian is like begging her not to. Again, sir, you knew what you were getting yourself into.
Did he
And
though? Did he?
I mean, I think he thought he did. I don't know what he thought. I don't know how he thought this would end because she was promised to the Duke originally on opening night. So, like, how were you all going to get her out of that? Maybe they thought she'd become this rich and famous actress overnight. I don't know, and wouldn't need a financier. But there was literally a song or something where she said, "You'll get jealous." And he's like, "No, I won't." And like, no, you did.
He did.
This whole bit is kind of insane to me. Christian has a voiceover where he says, "So Satine went to the tower to save us all." She's saving a lot of people's jobs, arguably. Christian is just getting this play put on. I don't even know if he's getting paid for it. He's fine. Technically, he can go back home to, like,
Right.
his rich parents or whatever if he wants to. But yeah, they're all just sitting around the Moulin Rouge, like, the whole like, all the dancers, everyone involved in this play, just, like, sitting around quietly, like, waiting for Satine to sleep with the Duke so he'll keep financing them.
Which I was confused, not at that part, but why they were sitting around doing nothing, because weren't they supposed to be rewriting the ending because the Duke didn't like the ending?
Yeah, and, like, do you all just always sit around waiting for Satine to complete her jobs? Like,
Yeah, how about the jealous bitch of a dancer when she can go sleep with somebody and make a bunch of money?
yeah, yeah,
And do your part, I guess. I don't know. Everyone's relying on this one dying woman.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
although they don't know she's dying, to
that's
be
true,
fair.
but I mean, she faints a lot, so I know. No one
Well, you
seems to
have to
read
know
clues.
yeah, you have to know something's wrong. There have
Right.
been context clues here.
Yeah, we're bad. Bohemians are bad at context clues, apparently.
Only beauty, justice, truth, and love. That's all we care about. Health isn't in there.
No, I guess not. But the narcoleptic Argentinian who
Mhm.
is playing the lead in the play, he finally is the voice of reason, sort of, to Christian, or at least explains to him what's going on, and says, "Never fall in love with a woman who sells herself. It always ends bad."
Yes.
And then he does his own version of Roxanne.
Yep. He dances a tango with the bitchy dancer and
hmm
they sing Roxanne.
In the, was it Tower of Terror, whatever it's called? What's
Are they at Disney World? Like,
it's colorful enough to be.
not in the tower.
Oh yeah,
Um, the Gothic Tower.
that was close. Come on. In the Gothic Tower, Satine and Duke are having dinner, and this is all going on while they're singing Roxanne on stage about, not having to put on your red light. And eventually, Satine is kind of backtracking and backpedaling, both in words and physically, and doesn't want to go through with staying with the Duke, at least tonight. Who knows what the future holds? And all the orchestra accompaniment kind of like slows down during the scene with those two in the tower. And while he is circling the table, kind of hunting Satine, there's just like this like sharp violin, just like and it's like built so much tension.
Mhm.
Yeah, I thought it was really good. Contrastedly to kind of silly performance of them
Yeah.
doing Roxanne,
Mhm.
especially because the guy does not sing like Sting. He's kind of more like gravelly,
Mhm. Yeah.
a little rougher.
Yeah, not all of these people are like great singers. But yeah, I do think there's this one shot where I think it's after you see the Duke like actively chasing Satine around the table. It looks like she's sitting on the ground in the dark and he's kind of like coming up behind her or like feeling around in the dark for her almost and she knows he's there and she looks terrified. And I guess the point is she's in love with Christian and that's why she can't sleep with him cuz like I assume she's done this before. Like I don't know why this one turns so horrible. Oh, no, she sees Christian, like, walking past the window, and that's when she says she can't do it. Christian, like,
Mm.
walks down the street, and she looks down from the tower and sees him. That's why she can't do it. But, yes, so Satine ends up having this horrible experience with the Duke where he's chasing her around, whatever. Ends up that one of the bodyguard type of guys from the Moulin Rouge shows up and knocks the Duke out, like, just whacks him in the head with something.
Yeah, it was one of the dancers from the very beginning, big muscular dude. He caught her when she fell from the swing.
Right.
So here he is saving her again.
Yeah, he's just like this really small character that shows up just to save her from things. He takes her to Christian's apartment. They decide to run away together. This dancer or bodyguard or whatever who brings her, we see Christian call him Chocolat, and he is the only black character in this whole movie.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it sure is.
Okay.
Listen, I mean, maybe it's a stage name, and maybe he himself is playing up on that. Actually, I didn't even catch that he called him that because I was probably taking notes. I was like, click, 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 click.
It's when
And
they decide to run away together and Christian says, Chocolat, go help Miss Satine pack.
yeah, I remember that scene. I didn't hear that's I just heard like something that sounded kind of vaguely French, like "sha sha sha," and I'm like, okay, fine. And I don't know. I think I was more like what the hell? The only black man in the movie just got told to go do something. I'm like, I don't like that either.
Yeah. Mhm.
Like,
Yeah,
go
and they
get the
ref
luggage, boy. Like, I didn't like it.
yeah, and they refer to her as Miss Satine in front of him, like,
Mm-hmm.
no one's
Mm-hmm.
ever I don't think anyone's ever, like, said that, but anyway, so that happens, and while this is going on, the Duke is reminding Harold that, he holds the deeds to the Moulin Rouge, this has to go his way, and he also adds that he will have Christian killed if the show doesn't end his way and Satine doesn't come to him after the show.
But I remember being like an intense shot of the Duke. Is it like a canted close up and like
I
part of
think
it is in
so.
shadow?
Yeah, he's still in the dark and he's, like, getting his head wound, like, fixed up.
Yes. You don't even see his wound though, right? Like he just
Not really.
the shot is like a super close up. You get maybe 70% of the Duke's face, and part of that is in shadow.
Mm,
And his delivery in the small amount of face you can see is pretty intense. The shot is
yeah.
intense. You know, you said sometimes he seems like unsure and meek, but then sometimes you see like the true
Mhm.
villainy.
Yeah. So Harold finds Satine trying to pack up, and he finally tells her that she's dying, but only because he knows this will convince her to stay, because what's the point of running away with Christian if she doesn't have much time left? Also reminds her that, like, the whole fate of the Moulin Rouge is on her shoulders.
I don't know what better time to run away with someone you love than while you're dying. Like spend your last few moments happy, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, imagine that. Harold also explains to her that the Duke is going to have Christian killed, and he says that she needs to make Christian believe she doesn't love him because otherwise he'll fight for her. And I think he says something like hurt him to save him. And he says, we're creatures of the underworld we can't afford to love. Yeah, sing this song called The Show Must Go On, where Satine is getting ready to go break Christian's heart while they're setting up for opening night, which is that night.
Yeah, I like the costume choices for Satine here.
Hmm.
They're definitely the most covered up I think she is,
Really
but
drab colors.
yeah, I think she's all in black. Like
Hmm.
I mean, it's a form-fitting type black dress, but most
Hmm.
importantly, she has a black hat and a black veil.
Yes,
It looks
exactly.
like she's going to a funeral. Hers, Christian's, Moulin Rouge. I don't know. All of the above, probably.
Her again, with the unique kind of editing in this movie, like, we see Satine walking out of the Moulin Rouge, going to confront Christian, but then we zoom really fast into his apartment, into her, like, just walking through the door, and she breaks up with him, definitely hurts him. He's not fully believing it, like, he does think that something must have happened because this is such a sudden change.
And rightfully so, because how she is shot, another like really close up, and a good part of her face is in shadow, indicating to us that she's hiding something,
Yes.
obviously. And even Christian picked up on that. Didn't pick up on anything else this whole movie, but picked up on that.
Yep. So Christian just spirals. It's weird thinking that this is all within probably like a 12-hour period because the opening night is that night. We see like Toulouse trying to comfort Christian and he like yells at Toulouse. He ends up going to the Moulin Rouge and like is screaming for Satine in the road. I just assume he's disinvited to opening night, like, but he also probably has no interest in showing up.
I feel like that is a good assumption because when he's in front of the Moulin Rouge screaming, some like
Mhm.
burly looking men grab him by the arms and one of them punches him in the face.
Yes, that is true.
So I feel like that was his invitation revoked.
Yes, but Toulouse convinces Christian that Satine really does love him. And I think Christian says something in a voiceover like he just had to find out for himself.
Hmm.
And he sneaks into the Moulin Rouge for opening night.
There is a little sequence of the voiceover, and where is this where Toulouse is like, "Oh, hey, she does love you," and he's like, "I gotta sneak in," and it's just like a really cool long shot of the one main street, I guess, that leads all the way to the Moulin Rouge, and everything, including Christian, who is bottom right of the screen, is dark, but the Moulin Rouge is clearly the focal point.
Mhm.
It's very blue again, with hints
Mhm.
of yellow and red, but it's a really cool shot.
So we're in the Moulin Rouge now. We see them doing this. We see them actually performing their play, which is Indian inspired. I know they've referred to Satine's character as a Hindu courtesan. I don't know why they had this set in India, but like whatever.
Maybe the whole Sitar Maharaja thing. I don't know. The
Well,
def
yeah, but I mean, like, why did they choose that in the first place?
they were flying by the seat of their pants 2 acts ago.
Yeah,
The set design couldn't help but think of Aladdin.
yeah, I get that. So Christian sneaks backstage. The lead actor, the Argentinian who has narcolepsy, has passed out. Christian takes his costume, puts it on. That's how I guess how he's able to sneak backstage. It's not like his face is covered or anything, but whatever. Um Toulouse is sort of waiting in the wings for his entrance, and he overhears Harold telling the Duke's bodyguard that, they know Christian will be killed if he comes near Satine. Like, it's all been taken care of. Like, kind of, we're aware of how serious this is. So Toulouse is like, oh my God, she broke up with him because of that.
Hmm.
So Toulouse is the only one who knows the truth right now. Christian eventually finds Satine, and I think it's interesting because, like, he starts this whole scene as saying, like, he has to go find out the truth, but he's immediately, like, so horrible to her and, like, yelling that he has to pay her, he needs to pay his whore, "You made me believe you loved me, you're such a great actress." She ends up running away from him, and he's chasing her, and they're just right at where the curtains open. They end up on stage in the ending scene. Satine eventually, I think, starts playing her part a little bit, but Christian's still just, like, dragging her around and, like, yelling at her that he needs to pay his whore, and he, like, throws a bunch of money at her on stage, and it's really ugly.
Yeah, now he gets it.
Yeah, no, Jesus.
Like, what the
Um,
fuck, man? It does seem weird because the build up to this, that shot I was talking about, it seems like he's still love drunk and he's like, no, I feel he feels something is afoot. But then the
yes.
second he gets there, I don't know, I would assume broken heart and anger take over him.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's kind of an ugly scene, but if I can put myself in his shoes for a second, I could kind of understand because at this point he might have felt he's been played the whole time, even though
Mhm.
she has said a few times that like this is what I get paid to do, but then she says I do really love you a few
Mhm.
times after that. So
Mhm.
he's confused. Probably could have
Yes.
gone about that a lot better. But while they're backstage, before they end up getting by the curtain, like the security guard guy sees Christian and
Mhm.
he actually has a gun.
Mhm.
So like the threat is real.
Yeah, while this is all going on, we get little cutaways of the bodyguard sneaking around trying to get a clear shot of Christian. But yeah, Christian ends up dragging Satine by the wrist. Where have we seen this before? Onto the
Dragging
stage.
another redhead by the wrist.
Yeah. Throwing the money at her, and he says, "This woman is yours now. I have paid my whore. I owe you nothing, and you are nothing to me. Thank you for curing me of my ridiculous obsession with love." And
Damn.
basically, I know it's cold, and he just leaves through the crowd. He walks down the aisle that's going to the back door past the crowd. And this is when I think Toulouse ends up yelling his line, which is, "The greatest thing you'll ever learn is just to love and be loved in return." And I do think it's a little silly how all this is going. I assume he can at least hear it. I don't think he can see it because he's like kind of up in the rafters, but
Yeah.
he's like, "Oh, I forgot my line." And it's like, do you think anyone is concerned about that right now? Like after this whole interruption and everything? To be fair, Harold, who is also in the play, because I guess like everyone's in the play, Harold is the evil Maharaja, I believe, and he does play it off as like, oh, this is still the penniless sitar player. He's just shaved off his facial hair or something.
He says something like he is trying to trick me, but I know it's still you. He does some pretty good improving here as far
Hmm.
as the crowd is concerned.
Yeah, so the crowd still thinks this is all part of the show.
Hmm.
But Toulouse, yelling this, thesis line of the whole movie, prompts Satine to start singing Come What May, the Secret Lovers song. I think she changes one of the lines to be like, come back to me and forgive everything. And, very obvious to Christian, she is singing this to him, prompts him to start singing his part back to her. So he ends up walking back up the aisle, back up to the stage. And as ridiculous as this whole sequence is, I do really like the shot of Christian walking faster and faster toward the stage, like belting his part of the song. Again, sometimes I don't care how ridiculous it is. Just like give me a big romantic moment and let me be happy.
Right.
But this prompts everyone to kind of join in after they finish Come What May. Well, Toulouse pops out yelling that they're trying to kill Christian. He finally like gets down to the stage, I guess. They all decide that they're going to do their own ending that they originally wanted to do, which I don't know if it's so clear that well, I guess it is clear that she ends up with the sitar player at this point. I'm getting confused about like what the audience thinks is going on and what is actually going on.
The audience in the film is not important. At this point,
Right, yeah,
they're
yeah.
playing to us.
Right, yeah.
The
So,
audience is there just to prove that they're putting on a show.
yes. So, basically after Toulouse yells that they're trying to kill Christian, this prompts everyone to just be like, "Screw it, we're doing our own ending." I don't think they're properly alarmed at the fact that someone's trying to kill Christian.
Just some of them, but the ones that like actually see the gun.
That's true. Like some of them do see the gun and like at least one of the dancers kind of kicks it away from the bodyguard.
Yeah, and bodyguards scrambling for the gun, and like there's a couple parts where he's like crawling between dancers and whatnot, and then like when they like separate or whatever, and he's kind of like clearly on stage, he like pops up and does some like weird dance moves, like
Like
he's
trying to
supposed to be
blend
there.
in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I like the part where he's trying to blend in with like the musicians and he just starts like playing a tambourine. But at this point the Duke like is angry. He gets up and leaves. He starts walking down that same aisle that Christian was walking down. But someone manages to get the gun away from the bodyguard and it lands right in front of the Duke.
Of course.
Yeah. So the Duke just becomes enraged and storms back up the aisle, yelling that the play's going to end his way, holding the gun. Harold punches him before he can do anything, which good for Harold for finally like doing something.
Right.
I mean, he is going to lose the Moulin Rouge now, so kind of sucks for him, but
Again, he did it. He gave someone the deed to pretty much what I assume is his only property.
right, his only like asset.
Yeah.
But everyone's really happy and excited that Satine and Krishna are back together, despite the financial mess they're all in now. The curtain closes. They're about to, go back on and bow, and Satine starts gasping and, obviously struggling for air. This is when she finally admits to Christian that she's dying while she is literally actively dying, and she dies in Christian's arms while everyone like looks over sadly. As she's dying, she tells Christian to write their story. He promises that he will. And it's funny because the voiceover is something like, you know, months later on just some not special day, I sat down and started to write it. And that's kind of how the movie ends, just like kind of a shrug.
Yeah, well, it ends at where it began, so we know what happens. We
Hmm.
know why he's all of a sudden bearded and moody.
Yes. Emo Christian.
Yeah, I was gonna say that. It sure was. um, so emo. Now, I don't know about that. They're going to be in a financial mess. I don't understand the finances of the Moulin Rouge because every time we're seeing it actually open, there's crowds. At the beginning with the dancers, there's people throwing money everywhere. It's a packed house. The
Hmm.
play that they had is a packed house. The audience loved it. The Duke, I'm assuming, is going to make his money back and then some.
Yeah.
He's probably still mad. I don't know. We get no ending here for anybody in the Moulin Rouge besides Satine, who dies, and Christian starts typing.
Right. Yeah, my last note about that was more so referring to the fact that the deed is in the hands of the Duke, so, like, who knows what's gonna happen. I don't know if like, I agree with you that I'm not sure why Harold gave up the deed if there were dire financial straits because, like, they seem pretty popular. Did you have any other thoughts before I go into how it held up?
We kind of joked about it briefly, but I did think it's funny that we have another film that's a man drags a redheaded woman around and then throws money at somebody else saying, "This is yours." I want to remind Rachel and our listeners that these are both Rachel's picks. And those are my other thoughts.
Yeah, I did not make that connection until our discussion, but here we are. I have to say, I don't really know how well this held up for me. I mean, I still love it, but I understand the criticisms of it better now. Again, I'm older. I've seen more. It does feel a lot sillier to me now, especially having to pay really close attention to it to take notes. I understand why I loved it at 16. I definitely understand why it was so unique to me at 16. It really was like nothing I had seen before. It was so artistic and stylized, and to me, so creative compared to what I would usually go see. But at the time, I was seeing like, again, the latest rom com, the latest like summer blockbuster, and there's a formula to those things. I still love it. I will still put it on and ignore all its faults and just enjoy it. But I don't know if I would necessarily like put it up there as one of my favorite movies the way I would have when I was younger. But I want to still defend me at 16, like thinking this was the most unique thing ever.
Well, to be fair, A, you could like a movie just for entertainment purposes, but we said that.
Hmm.
B, at 16, again, no defense there because at that time it was the most unique thing you saw. But I thought that it did hold up, at least in certain aspects. Artistically, yeah, no, I haven't seen it in a very long time, if not only the one time. But am I going to say that nothing exists since and before? Probably not, but it's also something I don't normally watch style wise. And I thought it held up. And I could totally see that at 16, this making you kind of have that moment where, like, oh, this is something different. This is something unique. It's jarring. It's exciting. It's energetic. I thought the performances were good. The
Hmm.
acting, for the most part, like we've touched on some of the actors, Harold and Leguizamo, who plays Toulouse. Ewan McGregor's pipes are fucking awesome. Like the dude can sing, at least
Yeah,
then.
that's true.
Most of them I wasn't sure if they were singing or not, but it's clearly McGregor's voice just singing. Like it sounds like Ewan McGregor.
Hmm.
There's no doubt. I thought the musical numbers, most of them were fun. I didn't know it got so much negative criticism. I like that they were mashups and medleys of these other more famous songs
Hmm.
that clearly put the point across in the scene.
Hmm.
It definitely reminds me of like 16-year-old Joe who would like often write music quotes in his notebook or whatever for however I was feeling at the time. Like you take inspiration from other people who might be better at art than you to help
Hmm.
convey what you cannot.
Yep.
And I think they did a really good job at that,
Hmm.
especially because the actors are portraying a bunch of penniless sitar players, so to speak.
Yeah.
Um, some of the silliness is a little eh. I don't even know if it's dated. I kind of thought at the time watching it, but maybe it's just the style of the director. I don't know much of his other work. This is the third part of the quote unquote Red Curtain trilogy, which part two was Romeo and Juliet with Leonardo DiCaprio,
Oh, right. I
and I think
forgot that.
that was right before this movie, so that like he was really big in those back to back films.
Mhm.
Think the movies are entirely different besides the kind of theme of love conquers all. I guess.
Yeah. What was the first one in that trilogy?
I looked it up 5 times and still can't remember.
Hold on. Strictly Ballroom. I knew it was something about dancing. I haven't seen that. But yeah, I agree with you. I do think the performances held up, and I think it's still beautiful to look at. A lot of the artistry still holds up for me. I think I just understand more the criticisms of the storyline, and I think there was a lot of criticism about it not being a good musical, which I could understand in some ways, especially now that I've seen like so many more musicals, but I don't know. I also just don't care. Like,
Yeah. It's not like the, it was a musical in the fact that there were musical numbers,
right.
but it feels like they were going for something different, obviously. Because, and to be fair, you can give it credit for doing these mashups because it still takes talent to make all of that make sense and
Hmm.
flow and have, because the music changes too in the songs, not just the lyrics. When they're doing
Right.
the elephant love song or whatever, and it's all these different songs about love conquering all, like
Hmm.
McGregor's singing lyrics to a Kiss song, and
Hmm.
the music is the Kiss song. It's like
Hmm.
heavier, thicker rock and roll,
Hmm.
done a little bit differently, but it clearly changes tone. And
Yeah.
to get that all to flow together,
Hmm.
not just the lyrics, I think it's another sort of talent.
Yeah. Agreed. All right. Well, we will take a quick break and we'll come back with Joe's pick. All right. Well, welcome back. And now we're going to talk about Joe's pick.
So my movie pick for this episode is The Matrix, directed by the Wachowskis. The release date was March 31st, 1999, and rated R. If you've never heard or seen of The Matrix or any of the sequels, a quick little synopsis would be that mild mannered Thomas Anderson works at a software company during the day, but at night he is known as Neo, a cyber hacker. Neo gets into trouble as he dives deeper and deeper into the underworld in his quest for answers. The questions: who is Morpheus and what is the Matrix? First time I saw the Matrix, I'm fairly confident we rented it like as soon as it came out. I remember like seeing the trailers and wanting to see it in theaters, but not getting to for whatever reason. I don't know if I just didn't get the time or no one went with me. If this is 1999, I don't think old enough to go purchase my own rated R ticket at a movie theater, so that could
Hmm.
have been one of the reasons. But I remember like being on the edge of my seat with excitement, like putting the DVD in and watching it for the first time.
I know I did not see this when it first came out. I'm pretty sure I saw it a few years later, again, just trying to see everything I should have seen by now. Pretty sure this was also on the IMDb top 250. And that's probably why I finally rented it. This came out in 1999, so I was probably in like eighth grade, eighth grade or ninth grade. This was not the kind of movie I would have been interested in seeing. We all know my feelings on sci-fi and how my eyes glaze over and I can't follow anything. So this was definitely something I checked out later because everyone talked about it. It was one of those movies I should see.
I feel from past conversations, this isn't exactly like the other sci-fi movies that you're talking about. These like giant world building where
Correct.
like there are 1 million characters. But still, I guess it is very much sci-fi, just a different aspect. And if that's not your thing, I
Hmm.
understand.
From what I remember of the advertising for this movie, I could not see myself going to see this until I was like very into movies.
Hmm.
But yes, you are right. I had a much easier time following this than other things.
I watched both of these on DVD,
Hmm.
and the load screen, the the commercials, the trailers.
Hmm.
Oh man, like I want to like compare and contrast to when we talked about the Quiet Man and the Apartment, and just this like you get the musical score and swelling and the credits and this very much old school vibe of a time and place. Well, I felt the same way, but for different reasons watching the DVDs at the beginning. And it has nothing to do with the film, too. That's the funny part. It's just what we get before the film. And oof,
Mhm.
like it makes you question the movie you're about to watch because some of the trailers are so bad. You're like, oh
Yeah.
god, is this movie as bad as these? Like, what's going on here?
Yeah, I've had that experience as I've been rewatching some of my older DVDs for this podcast for sure. I guess I couldn't tell you for this episode because you actually have my Moulin Rouge DVD, so I don't know what was on it, Joe.
Bad, bad things.
And probably like really old school, like anti-piracy ads that are like,
Oh
"You're
yeah,
killing the film industry."
yeah, lots of
Yeah.
those. Lots of people wearing hoodies filming in movie theaters. But anyway, The Matrix. I remember sitting there watching it. The action was great. I remember seeing the trailers, the bullet dodging scene, and Trinity's like little floating kick was definitely something they marketed. The technology they used for the film was really good at the time, and still most of it holds up. But what really kind of clicked that switch on in my brain was more so the story and the plot, because I guess it made me think a lot more. I don't really know how else to say that. Or coming at the end of the movie and just going, wow, that was a lot to ingest
Mhm.
for a however old we were in 1999, not quite high school yet. And
Right, yeah.
most of your films at the time were rom coms. I liked a lot of horror and simple action films, and this has a little bit more layers to it. And just the way the characters are talking about the Matrix before they show Neo what it is. So a lot of like speaking in riddles. It felt like my two best friends, I think, saw this movie before I got a chance to, and the younger of the two said it was rated R for confusion because he was very confused apparently. So it just was one of those things that's like it made me kind of think more about it after the DVD was over. So yeah, just the opening of this, the green logo because everything's green in these movies,
Yeah,
and just
computers are green, code is green.
yes,
That's something I've learned.
yeah. Right away, I just remember being little and watching these films, all the sequels too. And there's no build up. We just jump right in. We're over what black or like a black computer screen, and we hear an unknown woman's voice and a male's voice talking, presumably on a phone,
Mhm.
that they are watching, and that Morpheus believes in that person. There is a weird digital glitch sound, and the female asks if the line is clean, and the male confirms, but the female hangs up anyway. So
Mhm.
to me, like right away, intrigue. We hear Morpheus's name being mentioned. There
Mhm.
is already doubt that they're unsafe. We don't even
Mhm.
see anything yet besides like a black screen with like a little green icon flashing.
Mhm.
So the first thing we see, a bunch of cops in a apartment building that's not so nice looking, and they're busting in doors, and they reveal the back of a woman, presumably the one that was on the phone. And, long story short, she does a lot of gravity defying karate and beats up all the cops who are like
Yep.
fully loaded with pistols, shotguns, etc.
Yeah.
While that's going on, or maybe right before they get beat up, we see what looks like, I don't know, federal agents that show up, just kind of plain white male looking guys in suits. And they explain to the cops, like, hey, you weren't supposed to go up there. And it wasn't for like this like jurisdiction power play thing. It's like for your protection. Like your men are already dead. And then we
Mhm.
see Trinity just kick everyone's ass.
Yeah, so we have this like kind of foreshadowing that Trinity is dangerous, and I it's been a long time since I've seen this. I couldn't tell you the last time I watched it. I forgot that we opened with Trinity, which is an interesting choice because I feel like, especially for sci-fi, you could argue this is like an action movie as well. To open on the female character is not as common. And we obviously have this like total badass female character who's like handling things herself.
Yeah, absolutely. I also love that like one of the teasers in the trailer, which I mentioned, happens like right away. She does that little floaty kick thing that
Hmm.
everyone was like, "Oh my god!" and it's right away. So you're already getting payoff in the first 5-10 minutes of all the hype from the trailers.
Exactly, yeah.
After that, Trinity gets on a cell phone, which again, this is 1999, so these are not as common, and it's their cell phones here look kind of cool. And watching them for this viewing, they're like, "Oh man, those are super dated. I can't believe I thought those were cool."
Yeah, it was really funny, like, the juxtaposition of how cool their, like, fighting moves are, and then they use flip phones. And also, at least for me, they wear those, like, tiny sunglasses, like the thin sunglasses, and to me, that feels very dated now.
Hmm.
So it's like, yeah, like, there are things that are going to be dated, and you can't help that. But it like, the cell phone and the sunglasses for me specifically were like, "This feels so 90s." But then, like, a lot of the action sequences and the things you mentioned, like the bullet dodging, whatever, they still feel very cool. So it's juxtaposition.
Yeah, I guess probably for the film too, that maybe they had these old school phones because she calls Morpheus and mentions how that the line they were on was bugged because
Oh, right.
they use landlines to travel essentially to and from the Matrix. So she leaves the building, and a chase ensues.
Mhm.
And again, we get a lot of these cool things with Trinity. One of the few things that didn't look so good as far as like how the tech evolved behind the scenes is when she runs and jumps out through the window into the other window, and she like has her fist in the air like Superman, and like it just looks very green screen dated. It
Mhm.
made me stop and go, oh man, I hope all the other effects don't look like this. Then she crashes through the window and tumbles down the steps, and that scene looked really cool.
Yeah. I did like watching the cops chase after her over these rooftops. Like, she's obviously going really hard. This other guy who I think, like, we later learn is an agent chasing after her, also going hard. And then these cops are just struggling to keep up, especially over these skylights that are kind of triangular, I guess. And
Hmm.
they have to go up and then down and then up and then down. And you see Trinity and the agent like clearing them really easily, and the cops are just like huffing and puffing. And it's funny because watching that chase scene, coming into this with prior knowledge of it, some prior knowledge, I kept thinking that Trinity must be like superhuman, like the agents, because she looked like everything was so easy for her. Obviously, she's like leaping from building to building. But then I liked that little bit after she breaks through the window, tumbles down the stairs, she pulls her guns to make sure no one's coming in after her. And she's talking to herself, telling herself she has to get up, she has to move. And I liked this little bit of like humanizing that she's not just a machine because she looked like not human on that chase, at least to me.
Well, the chase and how she was fighting the cops in the apartment building, literally like crawling on walls and whatnot.
Right, that's true.
Yeah, defying gravity. But
Hmm.
yeah, it is humanizing, and she is not a machine. I like how you said that.
Hmm.
Interesting. I like the tension there at the close up of her, the guns, because felt probably how Trinity felt. Like the second you try to get up, that agent's coming through the window, and you're going to miss your shot. Also, still to this day, I think that Trinity has cool ass hair in this entire movie. Whether she's
Hmm.
like looks like a bum on the Nebuchadnezzar or when she's in the Matrix.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Agreed.
So she gets up eventually, and we see her running towards a ringing payphone. But then, as a truck's going by, it like pulls a Yui, aims directly at the payphone, and she has to run and beat it there. And of course, first viewing, I was like, "What the hell is going on?" Like, I remember
Hmm.
even taking notes for this viewing, just trying to do the best I can to remember what I felt and thought back then. And yeah, it was confusing because then she gets to the phone, puts it to her ear, but puts her like hand out, almost like in protection of the oncoming vehicle,
Hmm.
which smashes the hell out of the side of the building. Um, Turns out agents were driving the truck, and they are
Yeah.
looking at the debris, and she's gone.
Hmm.
And they even say like she got out.
Hmm.
And then I don't know if I've ever heard this line before, I don't know how, but maybe because the other actor who isn't the one who plays Agent Smith, so he's like a side character, maybe he just didn't enunciate well. I didn't pay attention enough. But I swear to God, this is the first time I heard the line, the informant is real. And that changes a lot of things for me.
I totally missed that.
Okay.
But yeah,
So,
I could see how that changes things what if you caught that.
but makes sense to that phone conversation, the very beginning, where she thinks they're being tapped. So,
Yeah.
some seeds being planted that I apparently missed one for 20 years. Go me.
Yeah, but that's okay. I mean, there were little lines I feel like I heard for the first time in Moulin Rouge too. So,
We cut to Keanu Reeves, aka Mr. Anderson, aka Neo,
mhm,
and he is sleeping at his desk. He clearly burns the candle at every single end. This apartment's a mess. He probably doesn't have time to clean because he's by day has a day job to support his nightlife, which is probably very illegal activities on the interwebs.
mhm,
In fact, we see a group of people. He gets woken up because they knock on his door, and he sells them some sort of. It's a floppy disk, but it's got to be some sort of legal program. We
mhm,
don't know what. Doesn't matter.
mm,
But before he answers the door, his computer is talking to him. The texts are being typed like live. He's
yeah,
watching them, and basically they're warning Neo and that he should follow the White Rabbit. And the girl who is trying to convince him to go out with them to the club reveals a tattoo on her shoulder.
mhm,
This will be one of the many Alice in Wonderland references we will have in this film.
yes. I really liked his computer talking to him. It made me think of the X-Files. I was such a
Yes.
big X-Files fan when I was a kid,
Yes.
and even though it sometimes got a little too creepy for me, and this is what I thought of like, this was just a good creep factor when this was happening, because the computer knows his thoughts and it knows that the people are about to knock on his door. I was into that.
Yeah. There's a lot of this big brother, like I know exactly what's happening as it's happening vibe, which is definitely X Files creepy. Yeah, for sure.
Mhm. There's even, like, there's an early X-Files episode called Ghost in the Machine, and that's just, like, immediately what I thought of. They cut to the club because
Hmm.
Neo followed them to the club, and immediately Dragula by Rob Zombie is playing, and,
Goddamn
like,
right.
I just this song is like a just such a time capsule for me, like, it's just so of a time, and I don't know why it's Rob Zombie in particular, but, like, I remember the freaking, like, Dragula car in the music video, and,
Hmm.
like, one of his music videos, I don't know if it was this one or something else, had, like, that little bit of, Cabinet of Dr. Caligari cut into it.
Yeah.
You remember that? Okay. So I remember watching Caligari for a class, and my roommate's boyfriend came in and was like, "Oh, this is that movie that's in the Rob Zombie music video." Like, he immediately recognized it, and kinda like Smashing Pumpkins having that A Trip to the Moon in it, but Dragula in particular, I was in London with my family last year, and we were at a pub. We were actually at, the World's End pub,
Okay.
and they were playing Dragula, and my son was just like, "This is great, like, I should get a drink," and, like, rocking out to Dragula. He is
Drink.
8. Yeah, he means a mocktail, but he calls them cocktails. So, I'm just thinking about how, here I am, like, late 30s with a kid in a pub in London listening to Rob Zombie, but also, like, this song kinda, like, goes hard, and I'm almost embarrassed to admit that.
Don't be. This song goes really hard.
Doesn't it though? Like
Yeah.
like, you can't not rock out to it, but, like, Rob Zombie as a figure is, like, kind of ridiculous, and this
Well, he
song
leans
is
into it.
ridiculous. These
Yeah.
lyrics are ridiculous, but this song goes hard.
A lot of Rob Zombie songs are ridiculous but go hard. That's kind of his shtick. That's
Is it?
fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Alright, that's fine.
It's funny though because I don't know if this song is in other movies of this time for club scenes. I want to say it is, but I don't know if that's true or not. If it's just this scene I keep replaying in my head, like, oh yeah, they used it because they they use in other films for clubs. I'm like, did they? I honestly don't know. I think this movie I watched it so many times, I'm thinking it's different movies now.
Yeah, I feel like it's popped up a lot lately for me anyway, like either in things I've watched, whether like regardless of when they were released, there's almost a resurgence of this song,
Yeah,
and maybe that's where we're getting confused.
could
I
be.
don't
That's a
know.
very good point. They're rocking out to Rob Zombie in this club, and Trinity shows up. So obviously, she was the one that warned Neo and wanted to come to the club.
When she walks up to him and introduces herself, he says, or I guess she's a legendary hacker. Is that right?
Yeah,
And he says, "I thought you were a guy." And she said, "Most guys do." And like, I get that.
yeah, it's a good line. I do like this very strong female badass
Mhm.
character.
Mhm.
So yeah, they're talking at the club, and she warns Neo that he's being watched and he's in danger. And they have this conversation about like why is he up late at night? What is he looking for? And he admits that he's looking for Morpheus in the Matrix. And they have this conversation, and then it just cuts to him waking up in his bed. And so I don't know. I feel like maybe just like the computer screen earlier before he left, what's real, what's
Mhm.
not, what's a dream. Did he even go to the club last night?
Right.
Did he rock out to Dracula?
Did he take some drugs while rocking out to Dracula?
The answer is always yes. Um, but unfortunately, he's late to work
Mhm.
because now he's Thomas Anderson.
Mhm.
And like any other Joe Schmo, when you're late to work, your boss yells at you. The very important part, though, is that he needs to make a choice. Neo's always offered a choice of things in this movie. But yeah, the choice is to like be a part of this system or to not be.
Mhm.
Essentially, office scene, everything in what we think is the real world is this fluorescent, sickly looking taupe green. I don't know how else to really describe this. It's like
Yeah,
not quite
like
green, but it makes your stomach churn if you look at it too long.
yeah, almost like a like shades of beige and gray with green tints. I
Yeah,
get what you're saying. I even had a note that like this office looks soul sucking. Like his cubicle is so dark and, muted tones. We see in a minute when he's going through the office how like isolating it is to like be in that cubicle. And I had a note that it made me think of our description of the office from the apartment as dystopian because you saw all the, never-ending rows of desks and like how many workers you would need to fill that, but then this is so dystopian in a totally different way because you're just isolated from everyone else.
somehow as soon as he gets to his desk he gets a delivery and it is a cell phone. It rings right away. We get to hear Morpheus, and I just want to call out this is our second Larry Fishburne movie.
Yeah.
Good old Lawrence. um
I wasn't even
so
thinking about that when I
no,
started this. Yeah.
yeah, we can't get away from Larry
Or Bill Murray.
or Bill Murray. So basically Morpheus is telling Neo that he has a choice again, and he could sit there and get arrested and who knows what else, or he could just kind of follow the direction Morpheus gives him. And he, in a very kind of creepy, like omnipotent god power, guides him to escape by knowing everything that's happening in front of him.
Hmm.
So again, kind of that like creepy big brother watchful eye type deal.
Right. I did like the bit where Neo looks over his cubicle wall to see all the agents turn and look at him at the same time. I
Hmm.
just like how the agents kind of move as one in a way that's not human. Like to me that's very creepy. Things like that where things move in a way like they're not real and like
Yeah,
they're not a person you could reason with. I don't know.
robotic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Neo eventually ends up outside on the scaffolding and I don't blame him for aborting the mission.
No, he is given another choice: is to go out on the scaffolding, or no, to go out the window to edge around the building to get to the scaffolding, to go on the roof to escape,
Mhm.
or to get arrested. Yeah, I would abort too. This ain't happening.
Yeah, and there's this bit where he drops the phone and the phone's kinda shot in close up, but then you see, like, I felt how high up he was, like,
Hmm.
as I watched the phone drop, like, I got vertigo.
Oh yeah, for sure. It like slows up and then speeds back
Mhm.
while it's falling. Yeah.
Yeah.
So needless to say, he gets arrested.
Mhm.
He does not risk his life. The agents are interrogating him, and essentially they explain to him they know all about his double life, what he does outside, that he's committed all and every of the internet laws they have on the books. And he's given a choice. Does he give up Morpheus, or I don't even know what the other option is, like, or like he leaves, basically says like one life has a future, one life doesn't. We'll forget your,
Mhm.
discretions if you give us Morpheus. But instead he gives them the finger,
Right.
which is, fun. And then they his, I don't know, his skin over his lips grow and he doesn't have a mouth anymore, which is super creepy.
Yeah, because he asked for his phone call, and they're like, "Well, how about this?" And they just make his mouth disappear. Yeah, I thought it was so creepy looking when it was not completely sealed up yet, and he
Yeah,
had
when
just,
it's like
like,
these like
pieces of
growing.
skin.
Yeah.
Yeah, and of course, that's when my son walked in because this podcast hasn't traumatized him enough. But no, I agree, like, this creeped me out too. I didn't.
Well, so there's that, and then they hold
Mhm,
him down and bug him by like holding this little microphone like receiver thing, which then morphs into this like shrimp looking crustacean creepy thing that crawls
mhm,
forcefully so into his belly button.
right.
Yeah, first viewing, what the like
Yeah,
I trailer action movie. It's about science fiction computers. What
mhm.
is going on here? Yeah, it's I'm trying to remember the first time watching this, and just yeah, this is yeah. I like your X Files analogy here because it definitely has that vibe. It definitely leans into the creepiness of the unknown,
Yeah,
because everything is just spoken about, but nothing is revealed. Morpheus, the Matrix, Neo, even just this is cyber hacker name.
mhm,
But then things get really weird. It wasn't weird enough that someone knows every step of the way of everyone's movement and how to avoid certain things and whatever.
mhm.
But then a man's skin grows over his lips, and then they
Yeah,
put a bug in his belly button. It's just this whole scene is, the rest of the movie isn't quite like this. It's just, it
yeah.
definitely sticks out to me.
Right, there's body horror going on that we don't quite see any other time.
But did it happen? Because then he wakes up again and he's just like, "Oh yeah, I'm cool."
Yeah.
Clearly, like he thinks it was a dream. He's like, look, patting his stomach or whatever, and kind of sweating it off, shaking it off.
Mhm.
His apartment phone rings, and we hear Morpheus's voice again, and he explains that basically we're looking for you because you're the one, so you have to come like talk to me, more or less.
Yeah, so Morpheus says he spent his entire life looking for Neo, but then he tells Neo, right? If they knew what I know, you'd be dead,
Hmm.
which I assume he's referring to like his belief that Neo is the one. But he
Yes.
also said that line is tapped. So like, why would he say that? The audience needed explanation. So that's
Well, some. Again, it's the movie is, until like the reveal happens in the Matrix. I feel like it's the carrot on the stick, and we just get the carrot a little bit closer to us every time to make us walk faster. And it works for Neo because he goes under a bridge and gets picked up by Trinity and company.
mhm,
So he still is curious enough, even though he just got arrested.
mhm.
A line I probably missed for a while. I definitely have picked up since, but again, trying to remember Little Joe. I love the line that Switch says to him. She pulls a gun on him and calls him a copper top, which is a reference to a battery.
Mhm.
I think that's great. I think the first time I heard it, you don't even really, because it's one of those lines that catches you off guard. She just throws it out there, and I was like, "Well, what? He's got black hair? I don't know. Is it
Yeah.
like Gladiator, where the woman's hair doesn't match the description?" I'm confused.
Yeah, I forgot
Um,
about that.
but also, there's just so much going on in this scene in the car that it's kind of It's a great one line, a throwaway line, but means so much later on. But then Trinity pulls out this like gadget that definitely is an over the top like cyberpunk torture device
Mhm.
looking thing, and essentially removes the bug that was in Neo's stomach. So he is
Mhm.
very surprised that that was not a dream and that was actually in him.
Yeah, I
And
like this part where they suck it out and he goes, "Oh my god, that was real."
right, I mean, rightfully so, because
Yeah. Well, and also the way they've been playing with these scenes constantly ending with him waking up, you really even like we don't fully understand what might be real and what might not be at this point because they're making it seem like it could go either way.
right.
So Trinity, before they suck the bug out of him, she's giving him a choice to leave or stay, and he does start to leave. And she says that he's been down that road already and he knows where it ends. And she knows he wants more than that. They keep referring to Neo in this way as like wanting something more and like in search of something. Is this because they know he's like searching online for like Morpheus and information about the Matrix? Is that what this is referring to?
I would think so because in the club they have a conversation that she knows he's
Mm,
been looking for Morpheus in the Matrix and
okay.
this and that. She says, I know you've been down that road before. And then he literally looks out the car door and it's a
Hmm.
shot of a road. And I remember thinking, because then she's like, "Well, you don't want to go down there. It's dangerous." I was like, "Were they trying to threaten him to drop him off in the hood? Like, what's going on here?" Because like we didn't
Hmm.
need a physical shot of a road in the
Hmm.
rain. She's just speaking entirely in metaphor. But I will admit that first time seeing this movie when I was younger, I was like, "Why? What's going on with this road? What? Where are they? They pick them up, they drive. Like, all right, you either come with us, we leave you here in a bad neighborhood." That's kind of the vibe I thought for a while. Because I don't know. They clearly emphasize that line with a shot of a
Hmm.
road. I guess I don't know. That was a show and tell. I don't like that.
Yeah.
But he stays. He gets debugged, and they go to meet Morpheus. You get a lot of riddles out of Morpheus. It's much easier to follow at almost 40 than at almost 15 or whatever it was. A lot of Alice in Wonderland and Fate conversations. Neo admits that he does not like Fate because Neo does not like the idea he cannot control his own destiny.
Hmm.
That's fair.
Yep.
And then he's given another choice. This time it is wake up from a dream, like we've seen, to your point, or he's going to show how far the rabbit hole really goes. It's ignorance or truth, I guess, if you boil it down.
Hmm. Morpheus makes a comment that Neo's felt like this in his entire life, that something's wrong with the world. How does Neo even have an inkling of what the Matrix is? Like, how has he even heard of it when he's in it? Or is this why they think he's the one?
Again, this is some sort of like cyber underworld. So maybe there's communication, there's talk. People are looking for the Matrix or answers of what it is.
Hmm.
Because it's some sort of like internet murmuring on the dark web
Yeah.
or whatever. At this point, I think the audience is Neo. Like, not obviously literally, but I think the waking up and being confused at what just happened that reflects us as well, especially after the interrogation scene because
Hmm.
all that weird stuff that happened. You're like, well, like clearly didn't happen, right? That's no way. We want to know now. It's like this Matrix is piped up.
Yeah, that's
I'm
true.
sitting there
At
on my
this point,
couch eating my popcorn, like, what? Just please tell me what this Matrix is now. It's only been like
right.
20 minutes and I'm dying to know.
So this is where I feel like the famous part of Morpheus offering Neo the red pill or the blue pill.
Yes, the shot is awesome. I like that. It's I got an extremely tight shot of Morpheus's reflective sunglasses, which by the
Hmm.
way are really cool because they don't have the arms; they just kind of like attach
Yeah,
to his nose.
I noticed that.
It's
Yeah.
so cool.
It's the
But in
future.
right, yes, it is the future. But in each lens, you have one hand in each lens, and each hand has a pill. And you see Neo reflected in both lenses, but only one reflection has his hand reaching for one of the pills.
Hmm.
It's just I don't know. It's done really well. Probably took a long time to get that shot like
Right.
perfectly, but it looks so cool. It paid off.
Mhm.
So he chooses the red pill. He chooses truth over ignorance, I suppose.
Mhm.
And they bring him into another room where there's a bunch of people and computers, and they start hooking him up. And he notices this like broken mirror is kind of melting, kind of
Mhm.
re-solidifying, sort of. He touches the melting mirror, and now it's like this silver goop all over him. Definitely reminded me at the time of like, you remember the show Nickelodeon, Secret World of Alex Mack, and she would
Oh,
like
yeah.
turn into a little like mercury ball or whatever.
That's funny.
Yeah, that's some of the time.
Yep.
Morpheus keeps asking if they found his location, and I guess that pill is almost like a homing device. It's going
Mhm.
to let them find out where his body is in
Mhm.
the real world, I suppose. There's this like weird shot where the liquid and the camera go down Neo's gullet,
Yeah.
but we cut to a very much different looking Neo
Mhm.
who's bald. He has these wires and cords sticking out all over him, up his spine, to his arms, etc. He's in this like pink liquid goo.
This also reminded me of the X-Files. I think it was maybe the X-Files movie where they kind of keep people in, like, capsules filled with goo, like, to do experiments on them or something. I don't remember exactly, but there is just definitely X-Files vibes.
Because Neo wakes up, all his plugs become undone, which looks very painful. I
Yeah.
can't imagine how that feels. And then he basically gets like flushed down a toilet. And we'll learn later that they recycle the human bodies to feed them to the other humans.
Yeah. That
So,
was my least favorite part.
yo, you don't say.
Yeah.
Huh, interesting. He ends up in this, we'll call it ravine of some sort, and then this spaceship looking thing finds him and kind of plays like human claw machine game
Mhm.
and saves him.
Mhm.
Luckily for him, this is the Nebuchadnezzar, which Morpheus and his crew operate.
So, once he's brought on the ship, we get introduced to, like, literally every crew member, and, again, this is where, like, my eyes start to glaze over. I'm never gonna remember all of these people's names. They're all kind of dressed similarly too, so, like, this is where I personally, like, give up on differentiating between anyone aside from, like, Neo, Trinity, and Morpheus, like.
Yeah, I felt the same way, but in hindsight, I kind of like that because Neo, and again, a lot of, I feel like a lot of the audience's viewpoints are through him up until a certain point, and he just gets fished out of the water
Mhm,
after he wakes up into some weird, otherworldly atmosphere that he's not used to. And then they're like, "Yeah, here's my crew, blah 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 blah, blah. And welcome to Nebuchadnezzar." And it's the first time you've actually been conscious.
mhm.
And then he falls asleep again. So it's
Yeah,
jarring to him and it's thusly jarring for us.
that's
At
fair.
least that's how I feel watching it this time.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot to take in.
Mhm,
Um, through Neo's waking and unwaking, we get a lot of facts here and there, kind of like little spurts of knowledge from Morpheus. We find out that it is not 1999, but like 2199 ish, give or
yeah,
take. We're not even sure. They're not even sure. No one's sure.
yeah,
Um, we see scenes of him doing acupuncture. He asks why his eyes and muscles hurt, and it's like, well, you haven't used them like ever before. It's the first time,
yeah,
and they're kind of like rebuilding him as like a human since
yeah.
he's just been kind of immobile for 30 something years, 40 something years.
Forever, yeah,
Yeah,
it's crazy. Is this when he gets plugged in, like, once he recovers?
Morpheus, after Neo's a little bit more recovered,
Mhm.
explains to him what the Matrix is, that it's a computer system, and that they can just kind of be plugged into it.
Yeah, they all have ports in the back of their heads,
Yeah.
and I think they say something like it's gonna feel weird, but Neo ends up screaming, and it makes a weird noise, and I just, like, I don't like it.
Yeah, the first time they plug him into the Matrix. Yeah, they have ports all over their body, but like yeah, they use the head as like the main frame. It's like, almost like a
Yeah,
giant button on the back of their head,
yeah.
and the the cord they use to plug in is
Mhm.
It definitely looks like it would go through his skull completely. It's very
Yeah.
sharp looking. It's like
Yes.
the RC receiver on a TV, but a
Okay.
really big, scary looking version.
Yes.
And yeah, they plug it into his head, and like you don't hear him scream, but you feel it, and it makes that like digital uploading sound.
Mhm.
Um,
Made me
yeah,
think of getting an epidural when I was in labor.
mm, fun. So now Neo is fully dressed with hair, no plugs, and they're in this just
Mhm.
like white room. Neo says something about like, well, this can't be real. To which Morpheus, I like this line where he says like, what is real? Real is just like, you know, synopsis in your brain essentially. Like,
Right.
and that's kind of a little bit of a mind fuck.
Exactly, yeah. I wrote, "I do not enjoy these large philosophical questions." I don't know. I don't wanna think about these things. I don't wanna ponder the universe.
Right. Oh well, we're gonna ponder. We're gonna ponder
I
for the
know.
next hour. Yeah. So he explains what happens to Neo, that they celebrated the birth of AI.
Hmm.
And then a war was started against AI.
Yeah, I wrote that it is funny and terrifying that we're rewatching this at a time when, like, AI is readily available to the average person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We learned from Morpheus talking to Neo that humans are no longer born, they're grown.
Yeah. And these are
Yeah,
like the fields of those pods of
yeah.
pink goo we saw. They're just endless fields of them. Yeah, and that's where we learn that when they get flushed after they're dead and can serve no more purpose, they get
Mhm.
fed back into the babies.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
like it.
Yummy. And they explain that the human body puts out so much energy that they're essentially like a big giant battery
Mhm.
for the machines to thrive off of.
Yeah.
So, who needs the sun when you have humans?
Right.
Obviously, this is a hard pill to swallow, pun intended. And when they unplug him, he like barfs and passes out.
Yeah, I
A lot
get
of
it.
like Thomas Anderson like taking these stressful naps in the first like part of the movie.
Stress naps.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, I would also probably throw up and pass out, so
Waking up from stress nap number 12, Morpheus explains and apologizes to Neo that they kind of have a rule that they broke. They're not supposed to free a mind after a certain age because it's hard for them to grasp it, to change, to understand. But he did it because he fully believes Neo is the one, and he tells a little bit of mythos here that there was a guy born within the Matrix that had the powers and ability to change whatever he wanted, has died, but has said he will return. And that's who Morpheus thinks Neo is.
and this felt so odd to me because like everything they're doing is fighting for the real world. Like you don't want to be in this fake world of the Matrix. And they're very concerned with, reality versus this made up world. But then they still believe in this like mystical, like religious thing, like a messiah.
Yes.
Okay.
And have you seen the sequels?
I mean, yeah, but I don't remember them.
It gets played up like heavier and heavier in the sequels. Like in the third one, he's basically Jesus. Yeah, it is a good point though. We were talking about like what's real and tangible versus what is presented, and then they are kind of left with this choice of believing in someone coming to save them.
Right. And like being reborn, like just that whole
Hmm.
idea of like reincarnation or coming back to life, whatever. It's so fantastical that it to me it just feels like how do you hold these two concepts together?
I guess one is more like Morpheus's idealism is kind of, I don't want to say faith based in that aspect, but he has to believe in something
Mhm.
that is not tangible. The
Mhm.
Matrix still kind of is. It's the wool pulled over someone's eyes, but it still exists. So it's still something they can fight.
Mhm.
It's basically just a giant lie,
Yeah.
but it's controlled by machines and robots and other physical beings.
Mhm.
So I guess, I mean, I see what you're saying, but I guess if you really break it down, one is like an active thing happening. The other is kind of like you have to believe in it, and that's the person's going to save them from the machines.
Okay.
I don't know. I understand why you don't like sci-fi anymore. Okay, got it. Um, so anyway, he has to start training. Tank is one of the two like humans we see, like natural born humans.
Mhm.
They're both on the ship, and Tank's job is like we call him the operator. He answers their phone calls when they're in the Matrix in the 1999 program. He also helps train them, and to train in this kind of world, you just literally plug that giant thing back into your head, and he downloads shit.
Yep.
You know, as much as that might hurt to get that thing plugged in my head, that'd be like such a quick way to do things.
I would
Like,
learn so many languages.
oh my, I would learn so many everythings.
Yeah.
And he just like apparently does like a 12-hour shift just downloading shit into Neo's brain.
Mhm.
Like, and I like this shot too because they come up. Morpheus comes up from behind Tank, and Tank is like he looks fatigued. He has like the screen fatigue eyes. He looks
Mhm.
exhausted, so you can only imagine how Neo is feeling, right?
Mhm.
And he wakes up from one of a training session. He
Yeah.
unplugs him, and he's like, "I know kung fu," and it's just like it works because it's him.
Yeah.
Anyone else, they were like, "Yeah,
Yeah.
you can't say it like that."
This is when Neo and Morpheus go in to spar, right?
Hmm.
They go back in the program, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
because he says, "I know kung fu," and Morpheus just goes, "Show me,"
Yeah.
which is great.
Yeah. This was a fun scene. This is a really
Oh
good fight
yeah,
scene. Mhm.
it's one of my probably one of my favorite scenes in this movie. I think it always has been. But we have this awesome fight scene, and Neo is gaining confidence and understanding a little bit about the rules of the program, which essentially is, you know, rules in what you think real life is, gravity and whatnot, but they can be altered, been sometimes broken.
Mhm.
And this is one line I really love after one of the, sparring sessions, and Neo gets knocked down. Do you believe that's air you're breathing? And again, that's another like, oh, that's another mind fuck moment. It's like, what?
Mhm.
Like, we know they're not in the real world, but he's like panting, he's out of breath.
Right, yeah.
So why?
So this is a pretty extended fight scene because again, like, gotta show you all the cool stuff.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
I feel like the trailer showed you a lot of this cool stuff, but you still didn't understand the why or the how. So it's not so much like it was ruining the movie for you. I think they just wanted to I think they felt this was an easy way to suck you in with the effects.
Absolutely. Yeah. It
Um,
worked on me.
right. But after they spar for a while, they move on to the jump program.
Everybody back on the ship gets all excited because, they are all there because they believe in Morpheus, that
Mhm,
believes in Neo.
mhm,
And so they're getting nervous because what if he doesn't make this jump?
mhm,
And we see Morpheus is literally fly 500 feet in the air or whatever, jump from one skyscraper to another. But everyone gets nervous because, like, if he doesn't make the jump, is he still the one? And
mhm.
half of them are like, well, no one makes the jump on the first try. Like, you have to learn. You can't just do it. But
Yeah.
what if he does? Then that really proves it. Yada yada yada. More faith questioning.
Mhm.
He does not make the jump. Plummets to the street. Looney Tunes goes through it and like bounces
Mhm.
back up, but
Yeah.
he is like coughing up blood when he wakes up in the real
Mhm.
world. Your mind makes it real, so if you die, even in the fake program, your brain will believe that you're dead, so you will die here. Like
Right.
the whole point is like your brain is so strong. That's why you can do these kung fu moves. You could do these jumps because you believe that you can. Your body
Mhm.
over there doesn't matter unless your brain thinks it matters.
Yeah. So after this, we move on to the red dress program.
And this shows him, but also the audience that the agents could just kind of tap into anybody,
Mhm.
like people wise, like they just take over your body.
Yeah. So they could look like anything.
Well, I don't know if it's they look like anything, but they can just be there, and like they're
Okay.
because they're they're a computer program, so we're tapped into the system physically, so they can just take over our bodies, which I think is even scarier.
Okay, I see. He told Neo that the agents are based on a program, so there are rules to their behavior, but Neo will always be stronger and faster than them
Well, that's
because
what he
I guess
believes.
he's not
Yes.
bound to a program. But isn't this where Neo makes the quip like, "Oh, what? So I can dodge bullets and
Yeah,
foreshadowing."
yeah. But while they're in the program, they get a call on the very nice flip phone that they own that there's trouble. Back in the real world, Nebuchadnezzar, there are these squid looking robots that hunt for humans.
Mhm,
And to defend themselves, they have to shut down their ship because they have to arm an EMP. So in case they're attacked, they could turn them off. I think the sequence here between the red dress program and then this prepping the EMP is they're just as dangerous in the Matrix as out.
mhm,
Like one's a actual like physical real world scary squid
mhm.
thing. The other one is a program that can kill you.
Yeah, I feel like these squid guys didn't really age that well for me.
There are some scenes where they look not bad. There's some that look a little cheesy.
Yeah.
So after all that, Neo comes up behind Cypher, who is just watching screens with code on it. They have a drink together, and Cypher is kind of presuming Neo is thinking, why didn't I take the blue pill? Why didn't I just go back to sleep and wake up and be Thomas Anderson all over again? Neo just kind of like laughs and shrugs that off, but Cypher's the one kind of leading that conversation.
Right. And it had been so long since I've seen this. I did not remember these major plot points that are coming. So this was like a surprise to me all over again. But I
Awesome.
definitely was, my suspicion was growing in this scene. We'll say
Yeah.
that.
And he was one of the ones that were I felt like he was kind of a voice of reason during the jump program. He's like, well, no one makes it on their first try.
Yes.
But I also think he just wanted to downplay the importance of Neo and kind of add
Hmm.
doubt in everybody else.
Right.
Because then we cut to Cypher in the Matrix. He's at this really nice restaurant and he is sitting across from Agent Smith. And basically, they negotiate. Cypher wants to be back in the program. He doesn't want to remember anything.
Hmm.
He wants to be someone important, like an actor. Wink,
Hmm.
wink, haha.
Yeah.
And in turn, he's going to give away, I guess, Morpheus because
Hmm.
every ship, which apparently there are more than one ship
Hmm.
floating around out there, the captains have a special code. The code gets to Zion. Zion is the last remaining human city.
Hmm.
So obviously, to quit the revolution, we have to kill all the humans. So there you go.
Hmm.
So obviously, Cypher is a traitor.
Back to what I was referencing just a minute ago. I had a feeling he was not happy with his life on the ship. Like, even though he was trying to seem like he was joking about it to Neo, we then see him when he's at this restaurant in the Matrix being like, I don't want to eat like slop every day. I don't want to live on a ship. And like, I get it. Because what really is their life? It's very stoic and limited. And if he doesn't remember that the matrix is fake, he's just gonna, ignorance is bliss and he can have a nice fake life, but to him it'll be real.
Right. I mean, these are strong arguments. Wonder now, though, like this just popped in my head. How did he, Cypher, get into the Matrix to have a meeting with Agent Smith without Tank or Dozer uploading him?
Yes, that was my question.
Huh. Hmm.
So I don't know, maybe they had somewhere else he was able to meet with like agents or people like on the other side who could upload him. I don't know. But yeah, I thought the same thing because your body is somewhere in the real world when you do this.
Yeah, usually in the chair getting plugged in.
Yeah.
I'm assuming, I guess, saying it out loud, they maybe were there doing something else and he just kind of like
Oh, maybe he
went
snuck
away.
away. Mhm.
Like, yeah, I gotta see a guy about a thing.
Yeah,
That'd be the only thing I can think of. Like they were on a mission and he just kind of like stole away to do something real quick.
right.
Anyway, we're just gonna pretend like we think that's right. Next day at breakfast gets interrupted with Morpheus dropping the bomb that they're gonna go finally see the Oracle.
Mhm.
The Oracle is kind of the one that guides these people, tells them like what their mission is, so to speak, in life. Does she predict things? Does she tell the truth? It's all kind of vague.
Yes.
I feel like I think Morpheus says this later, which is funny because how blindly he believes in Neo that the Oracle just kind of like says things you want to hear.
I don't know. I just kind of went with this. I
That- That's fair. I do like after they're plugged back in and they're driving uptown to go see her. Neo has like these serious reflections.
Mhm.
Again, over we just had this conversation with Cypher about like, oh, I wish I kept the blue pill. He talks about places he used to eat. He looks like he's definitely missing his old life that he never had,
Mhm.
so to speak. We get to the Oracle, and I love that the Oracle is a grandma. The
Yes.
whole apartment's grandma, the wallpaper, the flowers. She's baking
Yeah, like
cookies.
the
She's smoking
decor.
cigarettes. She's blunt and honest, but with a soft blow. Like I just want to give her a hug.
Yeah, like even though she is very honest even about bad things, it's like delivered in a nice grandma way. So
Mm-hmm.
it's maybe that's why this is how she appears. It's kind of comforting. But yeah, in terms of like grandma decor, I like how there was sort of this like short beaded border around the doorway when he walks in. Yeah, I just really like this characterization a lot. I like this scene with her. And we never see her again, right? This is like the only bit we get with her.
They both know why he's there to see if he's the one. She had mentioned not to worry about the vase, and then he turns and knocking it over. And to me, that's not important, but I love the line following it saying, "What's really going to mess you up when you leave? Would you have knocked it over if I didn't say anything?"
Yeah.
There's a lot of moments where you're like your brain melts in this movie.
Mhm.
Like, damn it, she's right. And then I'm thinking, well, what I think about it if she didn't tell me I was going to think about it?
Mhm.
She has this like inspection scene where she's like looking at his palms and his eyes, and it feels to me very like played up by her.
Mhm.
Like she's just doing something that maybe she's assuming Neo would think she'd have to do.
Yeah, I
Like,
could
because
see that.
otherwise she's either gonna say yes or no, but like there's no evidence, right? So she like looks at his palms, looks in his eyes. I don't know, checks his temperature, grandma stuff. I don't know. Um,
Grandma stuff.
gives him a cookie, calls him a good boy.
I mean, basically though.
So she basically says that Neo is not the one. And he doesn't look surprised, but he kind of chuckles and she asks what's so funny. And he mentions that like Morpheus just fully believes in him being the one
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
he even had himself fooled.
Yeah.
And then the Oracle even says, like, I'm not gonna tell you this, but I'm gonna tell you this. Like she gives him the tea and says, like, you have another choice. Shocking. Basically Morpheus's life or his own. Morpheus
Mhm.
believes in Neo so much he's willing to sacrifice himself for Neo.
Mhm.
And now Neo knows, according to the Oracle, he's not the one. So can he let this man die, believing
Mhm.
that Neo is the one to save him when Neo is not the one to save him?
Right.
Layers.
There.
A lot of guilt there too. It's like that's grandma guilt. See, it's so much grandma stuff going on here. Before he
Mhm.
leaves, she reminds him Neo doesn't believe in fate.
Kind of like don't let this control what happens because you don't believe in it anyway.
Exactly.
But again, funny to me that they say things like the Matrix doesn't determine who you really are, but then they believe in things like fate and the Oracle. I don't know. I can't help thinking of that part and forgetting Sarah Marshall, where Kristen Bell is yelling at Aldous Snow about his tattoos being all types of different like faiths and they're contradicting each other. Like that's kind of how I feel right now.
You're told that this is your role and your fate, but you don't believe in fate.
Right.
So does it matter to you? So again, it's about beliefs. Is Neo's belief in fate so strong that he can control his own destiny, or is Morpheus' belief that he is the one controls him, that in fact he is the one despite fate telling him he's not?
Hmm. Yep.
Anyway, they go back to um, their entry and exit point where they kind of held up shop to get in and out of the Matrix. So they're walking through this building, going back up to, tap back in or back out, I guess. And we see a black cat walk by twice.
Hmm.
And Keanu Reeves mentions, like, deja vu, and everyone's like
Hmm.
starts freaking out, right?
Yeah.
And it's like,
I really like this because he's just very innocently like, "Oh, a cat. Oh, 2 cats. Deja vu. Haha." And then everyone's like, "What?"
yeah, what the fuck? What happened?
Yeah.
I like it's kind of funny too because it gives them an excuse to be attacked as far as like a plot point, but it's
Mhm.
kind of fun that one of those weird real life anomalies that people like feel sometimes they kind of
Yeah.
just mention it briefly, and I've always loved that. It's like,
Mhm.
oh man, like people always freak out about deja vu and they just like threw it in real quick as two black cats, and then they explain like
Yeah, which mhm.
that's when like the powers that be change something real quick for us not to notice. It's like a glitch.
Right.
So I think that's fun.
Yeah, kinda layered with the black cats and everything.
Hmm. Yeah, that's true too.
Mhm.
More bad luck and fate,
Yep.
but they can't get out,
Yeah.
and they also cut the hard lines to the phone, so they can't get out that way either.
I like this bit where they're like they end up hiding out in the walls because there's nowhere else to go. I like that this is the solution, but then I also like how they're discovered because they hear Cypher like cough because it's dusty.
I've always wondered after we see that Cipher is, a double agent, because yeah, they're in the drywall and it's dusty and whatever, and he kind of like covers a cough, and one of the cops hear it, and he literally is like, "They're in the walls," and like
Mhm.
he coughs like louder to get recognized. I can't help thinking that that was intentional.
Yeah, I was wondering that myself, whether that was intentional or not, but also like Cypher doesn't want to get shot either. So like I don't know.
Right. I mean, I guess if he's dead, he's not in the Nebuchadnezzar, so he's not eating gruel anymore. So I guess either way it doesn't matter. But he can't not get caught because then his deal is broken. So I don't know. If it was any
Right.
other character that like kind of revealed where they were, I'm like, oh
Hmm.
yeah, they totally got asbestos in their lungs or whatever and sneezed.
Right.
But it was Cipher.
Hmm.
Morpheus kind of jumps through the brick wall to attack the agent so the
Hmm.
rest of them can get away because
Yeah.
here's that choice. And, and
Yeah.
Neo even starts to say it before Trinity like pulls his legs and they like fall down to the basement or whatever the hell it
Hmm.
is.
Yeah. And Morpheus even says specifically, like, you have to make sure Neo gets out of here.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, didn't realize that choice was coming up so soon, but here we are.
Yeah, I felt, and
Yeah.
I've always felt this way, but the first time watching it too, I was like, well, that was quick. Oracle don't play. I like this fight scene
Hmm.
with, so in like the previous sparring, we see how fast and strong Morpheus is, and he seems so much slower and weak compared to Agent Smith. And I
Hmm.
really like how dingy this apartment is they're fighting in, how beat up
Hmm.
Lawrence Fishburne looks. Like his eyes get all red and he moves
Yeah.
so slow. I'm like feeling for him. I was like watching like a boxing match. Like, oh my god, just throw in the towel.
Right.
They do a good job at showing the agents like dominance.
Hmm. I also, like, again, because I did not remember most of this, I thought they were going to kill him because of what the Oracle had said. Like, I thought he died right there.
Yeah, yeah, same. Well, they beat the shit out of him, but he does leave and tell the cops to take him.
Yeah.
Does that mean like take him out, or
Well,
take
I
him to
thought,
yeah?
yeah, because when he says that, they beat him more, and I thought he meant like take him out, like finish him
Yeah.
off.
So Cypher like gets separated, right? That's not
Yeah.
sketchy at all. This guy just seems to do that a lot.
Yeah.
He calls Tank and he gets the location of an exit. Cypher gets pulled out and attacks Tank and Dozer with this like electromagnetic pulse ray gun from the future
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
I don't know how else to describe it.
Right.
Sci-fi stuff.
Sci-fi stuff.
It's like a giant taser, essentially, right?
Yep. But yeah, then he
So
gets
what
on the phone with Trinity.
exactly? Yeah, which surprise, surprise.
Hmm.
This is not good. He starts unplugging their friends, APOC and Switch. But he's just
Yeah.
unplugging it like physically.
Hmm.
Ugh. Like I don't.
Yeah.
They probably don't feel it, but like just the visual and the thought about how fragile that is
Hmm.
both. It's like delicate but also gruesome at the same time.
That's a good point. Yeah. And despite, this not being like a happy scene, I really enjoyed this. Like, I like a good villain. Sometimes it's more fun to have a villain that doesn't have any type of like moral confliction because he's just going for it. There's no hemming and hawing. There's no like, oh, but they were my friends once. Like, no, he's going for it. I also like a good heel turn. Trinity is obviously very shocked. I mean, Tink and Dozer are very shocked. Like, this is the last thing any of them expected, right? And I mean, I do think it gets a little. He does one of those like grandiose villain speeches before he unplugs. I think it's Neo that would have been next. And I feel like that's such an old school movie thing. Like, well, we gotta have him pause so
Mm-hmm.
that, someone else can run in and stop him, but he's too
Right.
busy. Like, I would just I always feel like if this was me, I'd hurry up and just like get the job done as fast as I could, right? Like hurry up and unplug all of them. But he has to like terrorize Trinity first by like
Yeah.
explaining who's going next. And it's effective, but also
Yes.
stopped him from getting his job done.
Basically, he's kind of like a James Bond villain. It's like, I gotta
Mhm.
tell you all the reasons why I'm a bad guy, and you have to sit
Yes.
through it. I have a captive audience.
Yeah.
And then, like, in true bad guy fashion, has to deliver like some quips like, if you have anything important to say it now. And we get a little bit of history between these characters on the phone, though, because Cypher is jealous of Neo and the attention he's getting. Earlier in the movie, he's like, oh, you never brought me breakfast. You never looked at me
Mhm.
that way. So he's clearly like jealous.
Yeah, because doesn't he say, like, "Trinity, I never told you I was in love with you once?"
Yeah.
Which was just seemed very much out of left field that this is maybe
Yeah.
why he turned heel, like, it was believable enough to just
Not want
belie
to be
like,
there.
yeah, it was believable enough that he's just unhappy with being on a ship eating, like, crappy food all the time.
That'd make me want to go back. I love
I
food.
mean, like, well, right. So, I get
Yeah.
it.
But to counter your point in a way, he
Mhm.
does say, he's torturing Trinity too. Like, look at him. You
Mhm,
love him so
mhm.
much. You're going to watch him die.
Right.
And it's like, do you really believe Morpheus? And she's like, yeah. I was like, well, it's not going to be true because I'm about to kill him. And if it was really
Mhm.
fate, then, oh shit. And he gets zapped by Tank, who's not dead.
Yeah.
He just like
Which
got badly burned. So is it, yes, he's doing that like grandiose, I'm a villain, hear me roar speech, which I love. It's great. And it's a good point.
Mhm,
Good call out.
mhm.
But was he doing it to be cocky or was he doing it because fate told him to? It had to
Oh,
delay for Tank to wake up.
yeah. Well,
Bum,
it's
bum, bum.
I thought that was so, like, odd too that Tank would survive because I feel like he got the most direct hit. Because wasn't his back turned when
The
Cypher
first shot,
shot
I think
him?
he like missed him or hit the chair because like he gets up
Oh,
and Cypher's
oh.
like, oh shit. He's like trying to control this like giant electric stream. Kind of looks like a Ghostbusters pack.
You mean a protein pack?
Oh, the last episode has callbacks to the first episode.
Ah,
Love it. So yeah, he gets zapped with the protein pack, and I think he gets missed the first time, and then like he definitely kills the shit out of Dozer, unfortunately,
kills the shit.
but he does. Anyway, Fate slash Tank save the day,
Yep.
and he kills Cipher.
Mhm.
Everyone comes back. Well, the last two remaining
Trinity
people.
and Neo come back. Yeah.
Yeah, that is everyone now.
Well, yeah.
Unfortunately, I guess excluding Morpheus, who's we'll see is being like tormented for
Mhm.
his information. So
Mhm.
we'll cut there, and they're giving him some sort of drugs, the agents, and they basically trying to break his mind to get the codes back on the ship. The three remaining people are kind of having a moment where, like, well, we should just kill Morpheus, right? Because if he gives up the codes, we're all going to die. Every last
Right.
human's going to die. This is the sacrifice he's willing to make, anyways.
Mhm.
Morpheus said is. And here's where another decision comes, and he was like, "No, the Oracle told me this was going to happen." I was like, "This already happened in the apartment building, but whatever, fine.
Right.
We're doing it twice. We're bringing it back." And so now Neo starts believing in himself, despite maybe not believing that he's the one or believing in
Mhm.
fate. He just believes in his abilities, which is kind of cool, right?
Right. Mhm.
So while they're kind of loading in and getting equipped, we see the agents kind of trying to get Morpheus to speak. Agent Smith, who he's like having a one on one with Morpheus, and he's talking about he figures out humans aren't mammals, they're a virus.
Yeah.
Jesus, and the whole build up to that too is just like you go to one thing and destroy it, move on, and destroy it, and move on,
Mhm.
and it's like, fuck, ouch, man. Like he's not wrong.
Yeah, some of this really hits hard in 2025.
Then he also Smith also kind of just explains that like I need you to give me these codes, not just because like he needs to do this mission on behalf of the powers that be, the robots, the programs. He just hates being here because this is
Yeah.
work for him, right? It's like he has to go to work 24 hours a day to do
Yeah.
this. He's like, I just hate it. You guys stink. You smell so bad. I don't even know what smell is. Smell is not real, but you stink. It's in my clothes that I'm not wearing. Like he just hates on Morpheus and humans right here, and it
Yeah.
is it's tough, but also kind of funny at the end when he's just like everything stinks around here.
Yeah, did not see that coming.
Yeah, which is kind of cool because it for a robotic program, he kind of has a little bit of his own agenda and wants and
Mhm.
needs. So here we go. One of the like most famous scenes in the movie. Neo and Trinity fully loaded in leather duster jackets and a bunch of guns walk into the bottom of
Mhm.
this, I don't know, whatever this building is. It's a lot of security though. And it's just like a shot of their feet walking through the revolving door. They're putting a bag on
Mhm.
the conveyor belt. It obviously goes off. He walks through the metal detector. It obviously goes off. Like, sir, we need to see your whatever the hell. And he opens his gun. He's like strapped. And the guy's like, Jesus Christ, or whatever he says.
Yeah.
And it's funny because at this point, Trinity already knows this because we see her beat up the cops as the first scene. But I feel like
Mhm.
Neo is now realizing that these aren't real people,
Yeah.
right? They don't take life seriously in this scene because they
Mhm.
blow everybody away.
Yep.
It's a really cool scene. If you like action scenes with people being shot, I
Mhm.
guess it's a cool scene.
Yeah. And they do a lot of, like, flips and cartwheels and stuff, like, I'm not making it sound cool, but it's very cool.
They do cartwheels, yes. Yeah, they Trinity does more like wall running. Neo
Mhm.
does these little flips while he's shooting. It's like parts of it slowly start to become slow mo, but
Mhm.
only on our main character side when they're shooting.
Mhm.
It seems like, but yeah, they destroy everything and get to the elevator to go up to save Morpheus. This scene is so famous that it was actually in one of my childhood favorite video games. It was
Oh.
called Conker's Bad Fur Day. In that game, they do a lot of like pop culture references for their different levels. But yeah, you
Mhm.
play as Conker the squirrel, and you play this scene out, and you are Neo, and your girlfriend Bunny Rabbit is Trinity, and you go pillar to pillar shooting the bad guys.
That's
And they even have
funny.
like animated cutscene of like the elevator blowing up and the door flying through, and like it's the whole scene, and it's
That's
awesome.
funny.
Oh yeah, like it makes me want to play that game every time I watch this scene.
Yeah, this scene is, like, literally what I think of whenever someone mentions The Matrix. I don't know how you couldn't, like, it's just become so iconic.
Yeah, the music is just like this techno-y, upbeat kind of. I don't know how to describe it. Cyberpunk, digital punk. I don't know.
Yeah, we've moved on from Rob Zombie.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, I know.
So yeah, they end up going to the rooftop
Mhm,
where they fight more people. We get a cool shot of a person turn into an agent. We
mhm,
see like little shots of this before, like a hand or a foot, but we see like this guy like stretch out and like scream like he's in pain. I think that still looked cool. Maybe if it was done now, it'd be a little different, maybe a little smoother, but I still think it kind of held up.
mhm.
And the fact that it's kind of like, I don't know, maybe not as smooth makes it feel more real. Like if
Yeah,
my body was turning into someone else's body, I don't think it'd be such a easy transition. I don't know. It works for me in
yeah.
2025 still.
Mhm,
Now we get the famous bullet dodging scene. Neo unloads clips not into but towards this agent, and you see him like zip around and dodge
mhm,
him,
mhm.
and he grabs the gun and he's gonna shoot Neo. It's funny because Neo's like, Trinity, help! I'm like, what the hell is she gonna do?
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck? Um, and it's cool because we, from Neo's point of view, see the agent, his lower half is like standing still, and his upper
Mhm.
half is moving around. And with the editing, it's look like he's moving really fast because the bottom
Mhm.
half isn't moving. The other way around, we see Neo moving super slow mo in that very famous shot where he's like
Mhm.
his arms and stuff are flying behind him,
Mhm.
and these slow mo bullets go past.
Mhm.
And I only say all that because Trinity goes, I've never seen someone move so fast. And it's so funny
Mhm.
because we don't see any of that. So my
Yeah.
impression is we're supposed to imagine Neo moving like we just saw the agent moving.
Again, iconic. This is probably a scene that is like almost more well known than the movie. Like you probably know what we're talking about even if you've never seen this movie.
Yeah. Trinity has Tank download how to fly the helicopter.
Mhm.
That's a cool power to have, right?
Right.
Again, the things we can do if we
Yeah.
could learn that way.
Mhm.
They save Morpheus via like Gatling gun and shoot a bunch of agents. This is one of the few scenes that's not like covered in green screen and effects. I think they're shooting from another helicopter while a stunt team is doing this because it looks really cool.
Mhm. Yeah, I thought the bit where Trinity like crashes into the glass building looked really cool.
Yeah, the helicopter hits the building and then she like swings into the opposite side. That's I don't know. That's to me is just as a memorable scene as like the bullet dodging one.
Mhm.
They're safe. They need to get out of there, probably to heal up and not be attacked by agents. Because the agents know that they're there. They're still kind of sitting ducks.
Right.
They get to a subway. Morpheus goes first. Trinity starts to have this aside saying like she's always believed in Neo, and she gets sucked into the real world just as a bum turns into Agent Smith
Mhm.
and like shoots at her. So she gets through safely, but he like severs the phone, so now
Mhm.
Neo can't get out.
Yes.
And now we have a subway showdown.
I like how even though they're like fighting to the death, Smith still calls him Mr. Anderson. Like
Oh
it's
yeah,
so
he.
funny to me to be so formal while you're like shoving each other in front of subway trains.
I think part of it too is just this constant reminder of who he was in the system that they created.
Mhm.
But instead of turning tail and running, he
Mhm.
he fights. Obviously, it's a fight scene, and they're back on the ship. They're like, "What is he doing?" And Morpheus is like, "He's starting to believe."
Yeah.
And so they have this cool fight scene in the subway. We kind of see the speed and power of both Neo and Agent Smith,
Mhm.
and very much like Cypher giving kind of a monologue before he gets killed. They're on the train tracks, and Neo is obviously beat up, and Agent Smith has him in a headlock. And he's just like talking some shit. He could have just killed him, broke his
Yep.
neck, probably easily broke his neck, and he's
Mhm.
like waiting for the train to come run him over because that's more dramatic.
Right.
Literally could have just snapped it like a chicken wing and
Yep, been done.
roll credits. And Neo gets out of it and is like slowly going to the next phone, I guess. And he's like beat up. He does not feel good, and the
Mhm.
train just screeches to a stop.
Mhm.
And like he slowly turns around, and Neo and the audience are like, "Oh shit! I forgot they can do that. I
Yeah.
forgot they could just be a person and
Yep.
take over them." And now, fuck. So this
Yep.
next sequence is awesome because of that. He's just running through town. He steals a phone, obviously, to
Mhm.
call somebody to call Tank,
Mhm.
and like every so often you like see something happen where he's getting shot at or a knife is getting thrown at him,
Yeah.
and the camera keeps cutting back over his shoulder to
Mhm.
see like what was a lady with groceries is now an agent.
Yeah.
And it's really cool. It's really fun
Mhm.
and
I
chaotic.
Yeah, I like this sequence a lot.
He has to go use what I'm thinking is the original building from the beginning of the movie. We see the two other agents chasing Neo, and as soon as they say like the room number, obviously Smith doesn't hear it. It's for Neo's purposes, but it's voiced over like Smith looking kind of at his surroundings and like glancing up at a building.
Mhm.
So I kind of have always wondered, is this from the beginning? Does he remember where he's at?
Okay.
And I say that because after he runs through the apartment building, and again, getting almost killed from tenants, he
Mhm.
opens that door and gets met with Smith just lying in wait and shoots him a bajillion times in the chest.
Yeah.
So that's why I think he remembered where he was a couple days ago.
We should mention while all this is going on, back in the real world, Sentinels start attacking the ship. They apparently they would usually turn off the ship's power to become undetectable, but they can't do that while they're trying to bring Neo back.
Yeah, if they turn off the power and or set off the EMP, that disconnects Neo and there's no
Mhm.
more Neo.
Gotcha. Okay. So yeah, they basically need Neo to like defeat this guy quicker so they can bring him back and then also like save their ship.
So Neo's dead, presumably. Trinity is telling Neo's unconscious dead body on the ship that he can't be dead because he is the one. He is the one because she loves him. She loves him because the Oracle said that she would fall in love with the one, so therefore he's the one, and therefore he is not dead.
Yep.
Essentially, yep, I cover that right.
Yep, pretty good. No, I like your note. She kisses him and it's nice, but also the ship is getting destroyed around them.
Yeah, yeah, it's a sweet moment, and it's kind of in a world of chaos. Like there's like laser
Sure.
beams cutting metal and things
Mhm.
falling everywhere and sparks and explosions.
Very Snow White of them. Like after all these things we've been through and all this like sci-fi stuff, it's like true love saves the day.
Was it fate?
No, maybe.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah,
Mhm.
never know. Is she loving him because she loves him? Is fate making her love him?
Oh gosh, yeah. What's real? What's not? Who knows?
But he does wake up
Hmm.
back in the Matrix, and the agents at the end of the hall like all unload their guns at him, and he's just like, was he like no or something like that? He just like puts his hand out and stops all the bullets,
Yeah.
which is another badass scene. I kind of always wondered where like the bullets inside him went.
Yes, same.
Smith runs in to attack him. Neo's like literally one hand behind his back, beating him up. Ends up kicking him all the way to like Timbuktu down the
Hmm.
hallway. Runs, dives into him like he's now
Hmm.
in his person and explodes him from the inside out,
Hmm.
which is all sorts of weird and creepy.
Yes.
But what I love is the other two agents' reaction. They just like, nope, bail.
Yep. Yeah. They nope on out of there.
Neo quickly has to go answer the phone, so he gets pulled out as
Hmm.
they, hit the EMP and destroy everything. So perfect timing.
Yes.
Again,
And I like this last bit. I just think it's a
hmm
nice wrap up.
we're over black again, very much like the beginning, with a little like green cursor, and now it is Neo on the phone. Very
Hmm.
similar to that Morpheus role. It seems like he is either warning or recruiting,
Hmm.
and at the end is like the choice is yours.
Yeah.
And then we have this cool it's like a aerial shot, but it's like these jump cuts. It starts with like Neo above Neo's head. It goes up a little higher. It goes up even higher, and then Neo flies away.
Yeah, which I wasn't it's very Superman.
Yes, I remember watching it for the first time, and then it cuts to black, and you have the cool Rage Against the Machine song.
Yep.
But I remember for the first time watching it, going, "What the fuck?"
Yeah,
like,
let Nick now he
like,
flies.
but I definitely remember 1999 going, "They just they just made him fly because they could. That was the end of the movie. Done." And I think that really was the ending because they only wrote the one. No, there are three more
Yeah.
sequels now, but when that little movie makes so much money, Warner Brothers is
Mhm.
gonna sign more checks. So he flies more in the sequels. It comes back. It comes back. It's fine.
It's fine.
Yeah, I remember just obviously the visuals having an
Mhm.
impact on me. Probably a lot of people on the industry at the time. It definitely helped the careers of our three main stars. Keanu Reeves, between The Matrix and John Wick, is like going to be known as an action superstar.
Mhm. Very true.
Like I remember watching it for the first time, and when it was over, just kind of feeling like a mind fuck. I usually finish a movie and go, "Oh, that was good," or "I didn't like that," and that was kind of it. This is, to my knowledge, the best I can think of. The first movie when we decided to do this episode that I remember like thinking about it for a couple of days, like, "Oh my
Yeah.
god, what? It was real, but it was not. And it was fate, but it was destiny, but it wasn't because he can control this." And
Mhm.
everything kind of leans one way, but then it goes against itself.
I would say as someone who does not usually go for, like, sci-fi or even action movies, if I'm just, looking to be entertained, I enjoy this a lot still. Like, I feel like it's an outlier in both genres. There are obviously tropes you can find in other movies too, right? Like whether things are real or not, computers versus humans, like man versus machine, whatever. But I feel like everything coalesced well into this one story. I actually like that you're not completely left hanging wondering like what's real or what's not. Like they could have easily done some fake out where you're like in an Inception kind of thing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, 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 yeah,
Um, I just feel like it's a solid story. Like obviously like the action sequences still hold up. Maybe years from now the effects will look cheesy, but I feel like I mean it was still the first to do a lot of this stuff.
yeah,
I will say somewhat similar to Wizard of Oz, I feel like the discussion of like red pill versus blue pill is like such a it's taken on a life of its own in like popular culture that it is sort of hard to judge the Matrix as its own thing in a way. But also like that choice of the pill is such like a small part in the overall story.
yeah,
I don't know. It was just hard for me, like, when you had put this down on your list as, like, this was your pick, it was hard for me not to think of, like, stupid online, like, memes about, like, red pill, blue pill. But I will say, like, when I think of Keanu Reeves, like, this is probably the movie I think of.
yeah. I think that's the same for me. Some people will have John Wick. Some people will say Bill and Ted. Probably, I don't know. They're all good franchises, but this is
Mhm.
probably this is probably the one for me.
There's a rom-com on Netflix. Keanu Reeves has a really funny cameo in it where he's, like, the most amazing boyfriend you could ever imagine, but he's playing himself. And I feel like he has this persona of being, like, such a nice guy, and he was just, like, playing himself as that really nice guy who happens to be really rich and famous. So what about you? Do you feel like it's still held up?
Oh yeah, the rewatch made me remember that it was one of my favorite movies for a multitude of reasons.
Mhm.
And we'll get to the honorable mentions, but this was like comfort watch kind of tough because this all kind of comes the same time period. But this is like right before high school, but that's about that time frame
Mhm.
where movies kind of impact me mentally more than just something fun I like to do.
So for honorable mentions, for me, first thing I thought of was Kill Bill, which to me is kind of funny because like I'm not a huge Quentin Tarantino fan, but I remember going to see Kill Bill, the first one, in the theaters and just being like blown away by like the artistry, the creativity, the callbacks to other movies, other genres, similar to Moulin Rouge. Also, for me, just two personal favorites, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind and Amelie, although have not watched either of those in a while, so maybe maybe I'll rewatch them for this podcast, and then I'll be like, "Oh my gosh, why did I like this so much?"
Yeah, oh, that happens. That's the bad of doing this, I guess.
Yeah.
Like I said, mine was tough because they are kind of lumped together in the same time frame, but I had to think. I guess I was trying to be as literal as possible and think like, what was the first one that made me think outside the box of like
Yes.
popcorn picture? But I had Pulp Fiction, Reservoir Dogs. I kind of also agree with Kill Bill, but since it came out after those other two movies, I'd like nope, discredit it because my love for cinema is already here. Obviously,
Mm,
Memento, Fight Club, Clerks. I think there was a time where I really liked all these smaller indie budgeted movies that made a huge impact.
yeah.
And when you're just thinking about maybe taking film class as a
Mhm.
high schooler, you're like, well, it's a reachable goal. I could put two friends into a movie store shop and make a movie out of it, right?
Yeah.
Or six guys in a warehouse, cover one of them in blood. Like just the small scope of some of these movies, but how well they were done.
Mhm.
A lot of it, the credit is obviously on the pages there, the writing.
Yeah.
But those all kind of like were just like Memento is another mindfuck movie.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
Years later, and you already mentioned this movie, but yeah, when I left the theater when I saw Inception, it kind of like reminded me of like how I felt when I saw The Matrix for the first time. I walked out
Mhm.
like, what the hell?
Yeah. Fight Club is probably up there for me as well, but I'm glad you mentioned something like Clerks too, because there is a flip side to I feel like something like Moulin Rouge sort of opened my eyes to, like, what a film could do, like, in terms of over the top creativity, artistry, whatever. But something like Clerks, in a different sense, is showing you in a way almost how simple yet effective a story could be. I also think kind of Garden State the same way, even though I know that has like definitely lost its luster, but same kind of thing, like a simple story, a well-written script, but it makes you feel like, "Oh, I could figure out something like that." We'd love to hear your thoughts on our movie picks, as well as your own favorite movies that made you fall in love with movies. You can find us on Instagram at Back Through the Lens Pod and on Facebook at Back Through the Lens. You can also email us at backthroughthelenspodcast@gmail.com. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please leave us a rating and review. It's the best way to support our show.
If you enjoyed our show today, please give us a like and follow for updates on new and future episodes. Our show is produced by our host, Rachel Campbell, and myself, Joe Siomick, with additional help and support from Peter Telep of LPV Productions. Rachel, Peter, and I are also the executive producers. Our awesome logo is brought to you by Tom Faraci, and our wonderful theme song is by Matt Tarek. Thanks for listening, and stay tuned for more trips into our movie watching past on Back Through the Lens. Anyway, off the rails. Here we go. Because Joe's driving the bus. Someone drove by in a very heavy truck with heavy bass, so I was.
Oh, okay.
They were probably listening to Dragula. It's fine.